Good evening, everyone. It's 6:02, Wednesday, June 1st. Welcome, everyone, to the Planning Commission meeting. We'll first start off with roll call.
Commissioner Fuentes?
Present.
Commissioner Kreiner? Commissioner Wagner?
Present.
Commissioner Diaz?
Present.
Commissioner Bray?
Present.
Commissioner Hardy?
Present.
And Chair Vane.
Here. I'd like to welcome back Commissioner Bray, Commissioner Fuentes. Really wonderful to see the both of you. We'll go ahead and start now with the Pledge of Allegiance. Everyone, please stand. Ready? Salute. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I will now read the procedures. This meeting is being conducted electronically and telephonically. The public may participate in tonight's meeting by using the Zoom link or calling the phone number provided on the Planning Commission agenda. Please note that all virtual participants will be on mute until they are called upon by the chair, at which point they will be unmuted. If you are a member of the public and would like to comment on an item, use the raise hand function on Zoom, or if you are calling in, dial *9. To avoid any confusion, please wait for the item you desire to comment on to be called by the chair before electronically raising your hand or dialing *9. For each matter considered by the commission, there will first be a staff presentation, followed by a presentation from the project applicant. Testimony from supporters of the project will then be taken, followed by testimony from those in opposition. The applicant will have the right to a final rebuttal presentation prior to closing the public hearing. In accordance with Section 13 of Article 2 of the Planning Commission Rules and Regulations governing length of public debate, all public testimony from those in support and in opposition of the project will be limited to 3 minutes per person. Any testimony that references race, religion, ethnicity, economic status, national origin, or any other classification protected under state or federal law in a derogatory manner shall be deemed irrelevant and will not be considered by the Commission in making its land use determinations. If you challenge these land use matters in court, you may be limited to raising only those issues you or someone else raised in oral or written testimony or before the close of the hearing. Next, we have the agenda approval. Are there any changes to the agenda?
Good evening, Chair Vane, Commissioners. Staff is requesting that continued matter 7A, rezone application P22-451 for the southwest corner of Bullard and Del Mar be continued to the June 15th Commission meeting. Staff will be providing new notices to both owners and residents within the proximity to the site and scheduling a neighborhood meeting prior to further consideration. There are no other changes to the agenda proposed.
Okay, thank you. Do we have any commissioners who have any changes to the agenda? Is there a motion by the commission to accept the agenda?
I'll make a motion.
Okay. We have a motion by Commissioner Wagner. We have a second by Commissioner Diaz. Please take a vote.
Chair Vang, is that as amended?
As amended, yes.
Thank you.
Commissioner Fuentes?
Yes.
Commissioner Wagner?
Yes.
Commissioner Diaz?
Yes.
Commissioner Bray?
Yes.
Commissioner Hardy?
Yes.
And Chair Vane.
Yes, motion passes. Next, we have under consent calendar. So under the consent calendar, we have 2 items. First item is ID 22896. This is the regular meeting minutes for the meeting on May 18th, 2022. And the second item is ID 22871. Is there a motion to approve the consent calendar?
I'll make a motion to approve the consent calendar.
I'll second.
We have a motion by Commissioner Wagner, second by Commissioner Diaz. Please take vote.
Commissioner Fuentes?
Yes.
Commissioner Wagner?
Yes.
Commissioner Diaz?
Yes.
Commissioner Bray?
Yes.
Commissioner Hardy,
Yes.
and Chair Vang.
Yes. Motion passes. Next, we have reports by commissioners. Do we have any reports by the commissioners? I see none. We'll move to continued matters. Under continued matters, we have ID 22895. This is consideration of rezone application number P2200451 pertaining to 5.5 acres of property located on the southwest corner of Bullard Avenue and North Delmore Avenue. Well, shoot, did we push this?
Chair Vang, that was the
That
item
was-
we
sorry
requested
about
to be
that.
continued.
Sorry.
We should be moving to new matters, please.
Sorry about that. So we do have, next one's going to be, am I looking at the right agenda? New matters now? Okay, gotcha. All right, so next we're going to move to new matters. This is going to be ID 22884, workshop on the Cleaner and Greener Neighborhood Industry Overlay District.
Good evening, Planning Commission, Chair Vang, Jennifer Clark, Director of Planning and Development. Aubrey, if you would pull up our presentation, please. Awesome, thank you so much. So tonight I'm going to be presenting a workshop to the commission. Workshops are typically not items that we have public comment on. However, it is intended to be introductory for the item that is following that will take public comment. So tonight we are going to be talking about a text amendment to the development code to add an overlay district named the Cleaner and Greener Neighborhood Overlay District. Oh dear, Aubrey, it's not moving. Oh, there we go. So the purpose of the Cleaner and Greener Neighborhood Overlay District is to clarify and codify certain legal nonconforming uses to allow existing uses committed to the protection of public health and to promote a greater range of uses, including green businesses, business practices in certain mixed-use districts by utilizing the best available control technology that best serves the interests of public health. So how did we get here? In December 2021, pursuant to Article 58 of Chapter 15 of the Fresno Municipal Code, the Director initiated an amendment to the text of the Development Code to introduce the Neighborhood Industry Overlay District as a new section to Article 16 of Chapter 15. Following initiation, the Director held a series of meetings with the Council District Project Review Committees to receive feedback on the suggested text amendment. A significant number of thoughtful critiques were received from the committee members and from the public. As a result, prior to completing review by the district review committees, the Director paused input to evaluate the comments and suggestions received. And then on May 6th of 2022, a group of residents provided a modified version for the city to consider as an alternative to the proposed Neighborhood Industry Overlay District. And I would really like to personally thank Pastor Booker Lewis, Mrs. Mary Curry, Mr. Bob Mitchell, Dr. Venice Curry, and Ms. Debbie Darden, and former council member Oliver Baines for spending an extraordinary amount of time researching and providing feedback on the text. So what is an overlay district? An overlay district is a zoning designation that is specifically delineated on the zoning map, establishing land use requirements that govern in addition to the standards set forth in the underlying zoning district, and it allows for modifications to that district. So why have we provided this overlay, and why did I initiate an overlay district last December? Article 4 of the Development Code defines and describes how legal non-conforming uses, sometimes called grandfather uses, are determined and regulated. It allows for the continued utility and economic viability of uses, structures, site features, and lots which were lawfully created prior to the adoption of the Development Code or subsequent specific plans, but no longer conform to that. The Development Code calls out land use classifications, such as commercial or industrial or residential, and narrower categories called land uses, such as bank or warehouse or duplex. A legal nonconforming use is limited to the narrower category to be able to continue operations. Many legal nonconforming uses were constructed for flexibility as a shopping center or a business park, and these assumed that over time, different tenants or uses within that broader land use classification would occupy the space. When these became legal nonconforming, the ongoing use was now limited from that broader classification to only the use operating at the time the land use was changed. The limitations of use create situations where structures built for broad use classifications cannot attract new users in the same use type as the prior user. And this limits the ability to sell or lease the facility or to access financing. So for this particular overlay and this new district that would be created within the Development Code, the Cleaner and Greener Neighborhood Industry Overlay can be used only on parcels where a legally established public and semi-public, commercial, industrial, transportation, communication, utilities, or agricultural use classification existed prior to rezoning by the city to a mixed-use zone district, including neighborhood mixed use, corridor mixed use, or regional mixed use classification. The property owner may choose to apply to place this overlay onto their property in a rezoning process. The underlying land use district will remain in place while additional land uses may be added to the permitted or conditional uses for the parcel. As a part of the process, an environmental assessment will be required to determine current demands and impacts on water use, energy use, traffic, noise, odor, light spill, as well as the same for the proposed new uses. This overlay would require that new uses proposed result in a net reduction or no change in impacts. Article 58 of the Development Code outlines the requirements for the rezone process, which applies to the use of all overlay districts. A property owner may apply to place this overlay on the qualified property. Public notice will be mailed to surrounding property owners and will be heard by the applicable district committee. There may be additional requirements for neighborhood meeting, which will be noticed. It will also be heard by the Planning Commission and the City Council prior to approval or denial of that application. So where could the overlay be used? So as I stated before, this would only be in districts where there is an underlying mixed-use designation, but it has a pre-existing industrial land use classification. This map delineates those properties in red. Primarily, these are clustered on the city's transit corridors along Blackstone, Kings Canyon, Ventura, California, Shaw, and Belmont. There are a few additional sites in Northeast, Southeast, and Southwest Fresno, which could also qualify. So what will it do if it is added to the Development Code? So the overlay could, once adopted, allow for uses that exist in that broader land use classification, so that big bucket that we talked about before, which are similar to existing use types to be approved within existing structures. It provides for continued use and operation of buildings and facilities which were constructed for specific purposes. The base zone district uses will still be permitted alongside the existing use classifications, allowing for continued use of the structures. By requiring an analysis analysis of impacts and a reduction of these impacts, the overlay assists in the transition from industrial classifications to uses permitted within the mixed-use zoning district. The process of rezoning provides for broader input and review from district committees to the Planning Commission to the City Council. It allows for more discretion by the city to place conditions of approval to ensure the proposed uses do not create conflicts with adjacent uses. And additionally, certain uses will be restricted by a conditional use permit. So in the proposed text amendment or overlay, it would allow for, and again, this is just the initiation of the process. We're going to talk about that in a minute. So the proposed permitted uses, in addition to the base uses that would be permitted, all exist in the public and in semi-public, commercial, industrial, transportation, communication utilities, or agricultural use classifications permitted in the overlay. These include colleges and trade schools, public or private, animal care sales and services limited only to veterinary services, automobile vehicle sales and services limited to automobile rentals, automobile vehicle sales and leasing, automobile vehicle repair major, automobile vehicle service and repair minor, service station and washing, construction and material yards, custom manufacturing, limited industrial, general industrial, research and development, warehousing, storage, and distribution limited to indoor warehousing and storage, outdoor storage, personal storage, wholesaling and distribution, chemical and mineral storage. Communication facilities, antenna and transmission towers, facilities within buildings only, freight truck terminals and warehouses, light fleet-based services, utilities major, and utilities minor. Additionally, the amendment proposed the following uses existing in the public, semi-public, commercial, industrial, etc. land use classifications to be permitted only with a conditional use permit in conjunction with the overlay. These include CRV recycling center, recycling processing facility, and waste transfer facility. Lastly, the amendment proposed the following uses to be prohibited within the district in addition to the uses already prohibited in the base district. So prohibited uses would be emergency shelter, adult-oriented business, towing and impound, salvage and wrecking, intensive industrial, airports and heliports, agricultural processing, agricultural support services, animal raising, crop cultivation, rendering, sales lot, feedlot, stockyard, cannabis dispensaries, cotton ginning, wineries, or alcohol fuel production. The Cleaner and Greener Neighborhood Industry Overlay is a new section of the Development Code. So essentially what this does, it provides a new menu choice for property owners to apply to layer over their existing zoning. Right now, we are in the initiation process. The very next item on the agenda will be to ask the Planning Commission to initiate this text amendment, and that will include listening to the public as to whether or not this is something that the Planning Commission wants to initiate. If initiated, the draft would be sent to all commenting agencies, internal and external to the city. It will be reviewed by all district committees, design review committees, the Airport Land Use Commission, and all of that information and comments and critique and feedback will be brought back to the Planning Commission and City Council, which will be noticed hearings. And then you will have an opportunity to reevaluate whether or not this is a menu choice that you would like to add to the development code. And with that, I would be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Do we have any questions from the commission?
Just to clarify, so this is just an initial part of this, and if we were to recommend it, we're just recommending that the process start, and that there would be changes probably to it as more comments were added and that kind of thing. Is that correct?
Correct. And ultimately, the choice of the planning, a recommendation of the Planning Commission to the City Council could be not to adopt it, right? So this would simply initiate the process. Under the Development Code, the Planning Director, the Planning Commission, and the City Council can initiate amendments to text. So you can add, subtract, change, modify things that are in the development code. So that is within your purview. So this allows you to say, we would like to add an additional menu choice to the development code. It will not change any land uses that currently exist today, nor will the adoption of putting that menu choice into the development code change a land use. It would still need to be applied for and laid over a property when a rezone was completed.
Do we have any other questions from the commission?
What's the turnaround time on this process?
You know, it depends. So we initially started in December, and we're looking at a 3 to 6 month timeline. It could be 3 to 6 months. It could be longer if we determine that there's additional environmental assessment or analysis that would need to be done with this text amendment. So I would say at shortest 3 months, at longest 9 months.
For those overlay uses that do not require a conditional use permit, would applications for the overlay still come before the Planning Commission?
No. So permitted uses would, so under this, there's a requirement for an initial study. So under CEQA, there would be an initial study and there would be a determination that it meets the standards set forth in the text amendment. And those permitted uses could be approved through either a development permit or through a zone clearance that would be issued by staff, and only with an appeal would they come before the Planning Commission.
And in terms of the prohibited uses, is intensive industrial synonymous with heavy industrial?
It is. There's a definition in the development code. I don't have it in front of me, but intensive industrial really are uses that, in looking at this text amendment, really would not be able to meet the standards set forth in terms of reduction in air emissions, reduction in traffic or noise. So all of the items that we're intending to try to start to de-intensify areas of our community that are intended for mixed use, they would not be appropriate in those areas.
Thank you.
We have any other questions from the commission? None. Thank you.
Thank you.
Now go out to the public. Are there any members of the public who wish to comment?
Chair Vang, we'd go on to the next one for the introduction of the item itself. Right.
Okay. So I'll now invite the applicant to speak, or we're just gonna.
So this was a workshop. So if you'll read the next item on the agenda, the city there isn't an applicant for this particular item. So then the Planning Commission can open the hearing specifically for the next item on the agenda.
Gotcha. We don't need to vote on this at all.
No, it's just to help you, guide you for the next item.
Perfect. Thank you. All right. So on the next item, we have ID 22872. This is for the consideration of plan amendment application number P20016665. It's a rezone application pertaining to 92.53 acres of property bounded by East Vine Avenue to the north, State Route 41 to the east, and South Elm Avenue to the west. I did.
There you go. Yeah, there it is.
My apologies. I'm jumping the gun on this. The item is going to be ID 22911. This is the consideration of resolution to initiate a text amendment to Article 16 of Chapter 15 of the Municipal Code, adding to the Clean Air and Greener Neighborhood Industry Overlay District Citywide.
Chair Vang, I would ask that the Planning Commission take input on this particular item before you deliberate on whether or not to initiate the text amendment.
Okay.
Thank you.
Do we have any individuals within the chambers who would like to speak on this item? If you do, please approach, state your name and address.
Good evening. My name is Emily Brandt, and I'm here to speak about the issues that you raised here, 22911, and I think the other one is related to that. It's the next one, which is 872, I believe. Yes, both of those, which are both on the Elm Street area, Elm Avenue rezone. I am very concerned about this. I researched this before I came to make sure that I was going to be speaking to the point here. Both the TCC area and the, that's the transformed Fresno area, as well as the Elm Street or Avenue brownfields are included in part of this rezone area. Okay, so when I looked up one of the housing tracts on Cal Enviro screen, it came up, you probably can't see this, but it says 99.65 pollution burdened, which is why this area of 93706 qualified for the Strategic Growth Initiative funds to $66.5 million being put into reducing greenhouse gas emissions in this very area. So, if you have looked at the Transform Fresno plan, you know that it includes a satellite West Fresno campus, which is already going to have a massive air pollution increase burden simply by generating traffic for some 2,000 students attending, and new commercial areas that are being in the West Creek Village area, as well as new residential, much more densely built. So I personally, honestly do not understand how anyone could add light industrial to this. There are human beings who live in this area. So I really ask that this commission immediately strike this move against public interest from consideration. If you want more information, you know, you can get all the demographics. I'm talking to 2 points. I won't get up again for the second area, okay?
You're fine, you have a minute.
Okay, thank you. This information gives you all the demographic burdens if you're not familiar with the application made by the City Council, well, the Planning Commission for the TCC grant. And it's really, it's a major burden. So we do not need light industrial in this area. What we need are opportunities for the community to actually, not with the steering committee in place, but members who own businesses beyond the ones that are always invited to participate by the city. Remove all those names, start over with new people, and a much bigger outreach by flyering. People in Southwest Fresno do not very often have internet access. They don't always go to libraries or churches. So please bear that in mind. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms.
You're welcome.
Do we have any other members of the public who would like to speak on this matter? Please state your name and address.
Good evening, Commissioners, Chair Vang. My name is John Kinsey. I'm with Wanger Jones Helsley here in Fresno, California, 265 East River Park Circle. I'm here on behalf of the Elm Avenue landowners. I've spoken at some of the local committee meetings on the previous iteration of the text amendment that's been proposed. These landowners, they're existing businesses. They represent collectively several hundreds of millions of dollars of investment in the city of Fresno, and they're all relatively new buildings built primarily between the mid-2000s and mid-2010s. They're fully developed, they're clean businesses, and they're simply seeking to reinstate their zoning. We sent a letter to the city a little earlier today that has some technical comments on the proposed text amendment that's before you. I don't want to repeat those. I know that staff is likely going to be considering those at some time in the future. However, I did want to make sure that the text amendment isn't going to be a justification for the continuance of the Elm Avenue matter this evening. The landowners have been working with the city for many years to try to get the zoning reinstated for their property. And back in January of 2021, we were actually in front of the Planning Commission. And we've been working hard to try to bring this back to you today. So just as the Baceto project 2 weeks ago, we really do respectfully request an up or down vote this evening on the Elm Avenue project. Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Do we have any other members within the chamber who would like to speak on this matter? Do we have any members online on Zoom who would like to speak on this matter? If so, please raise your hand. We have one in the chambers right now.
Good evening, Commissioners. I'd like to welcome back two former Commissioners, Commissioner Fuentes to the dais and former Chair. My name is Eric Payne. I'm a resident in Southwest Fresno. For the sanctity of privacy, I won't release my address if that's okay, Mr. Chair. And then I'm also the Executive Director of the Central Valley Urban Institute. We stand in strong opposition of this overlay. I request, Chair Vang, that I yield back the balance of my time to Madeline with the Western Center on Law and Poverty, who'll be representing us. Thank you.
Do we have any members on Zoom who would like to speak on this matter? Please raise your hand. We'll unmute you and let you speak on this matter.
Chair Vang, we have 6 hands raised in the Zoom.
Perfect. Please state your name and address.
Lisa Flores, District 1, Tower District. I'm also a member of the District 1 Planning Review Committee and also a member of the AB 617 Community Steering Committee. And these are just my comments and are not representative of the groups I'm on. Anyway, long story short, I have a couple of issues. When this goes out to the public, what is your marketing to get more people involved? Because typically, you know, there's a post on the internet, there's a post somewhere on the city clerk's page, and nobody knows. That's my first issue. Second, this seems like it's just going to be not going to get a lot of public review, which I have great concerns over, especially in the footprint of AB 617 and dealing with the industrial triangle and everything that is within the sphere of influence of that, especially on Elm Street. And, you know, I don't know if this is a good idea, guys. I kind of see where it's kind of a good idea, but when you implement it and the practicality of it, there's so many questions that I have concerns. And also, too, I would like to yield my time, what's left of my time to Madeline as well. Thank you.
Go ahead and let's let the next individual, please raise your hand. Let the next individual speak. Please state your name and address.
Good evening, Planning Commission. This is Kyle Lopez Schmidt, 115 North Calaveras Street. I'm speaking as a avid community member that's been working on the revitalization of disinvested neighborhoods throughout Fresno, but specifically Southwest Fresno and South Tower District. This proposed overlay is of great concern. I think it undermines a lot of the robust community outreach process that happens with specific plans. That's the time when the most community are engaged and have an opportunity to set the vision for their neighborhoods. With this type of overlay that might not get the same public interaction, I think subverts community power and replaces it with the investment power that some of these industrial developers, industrial businesses have that have for a long time polluted our neighborhoods and done great harm to community members that have very few options. And so stand in solidarity with communities that are trying to reduce and eliminate industrial in their neighborhoods. And that includes the South Tower District with our fight against the producers expansion, as well as Southwest Fresno with the Paceto Foods, as well as the Elm Avenue projects, really trying to subvert the robust community processes that we have had in the name of their profitability. And our communities are setting a vision for mixed use, vibrant, healthy neighborhoods, and this doesn't deliver that. And so you should reject it. I appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Let's go ahead and let the next individual speak. Please state your name and address.
Good evening. Good evening. My name is Michael and Lewis, and I live in Southwest Fresno. I have a lot of mixed emotions about this whole thing. I served on the Southwest Pacific Plan. It was an 8-month commitment that turned into 2 years. I only missed one meeting of that whole time. I did it because I have a love for Southwest Fresno. I have a love for the people who, for whatever reasons, were denied the prosperity that they should have had back from the 60s and the 70s. This particular thing that goes on with this chipping away at things that have already been said, things have already been put down on paper, things that have been passed into law. I've had about 4 or 5 different incidences now where they want to rezone and rezone and rezone all the hard work that we put in. We thought long and hard about this, and no one came back to us and said, do you want to make an amendment to this? Do you want to come back and look at this green overlay? At least I wasn't contacted. And all I can tell you is that this chipping away reminds me of Michelangelo. When he had a block of marble, he created something beautiful like the Statue of David, like the Pieta. But this whole chipping away from this rezoning and rezoning is nothing like what Michelangelo would come up with. It's going to destroy our community, and I would hopefully ask you and prayerfully ask you to please reconsider and do not let this go forth. Thank you.
Thank you. Let's go ahead and let the next individual speak. Let's go ahead and before we move to individuals online, we do have another member of the public within the chambers. Please approach the podium, state your name and address.
Hello, my name is Pastor B.T. Lewis, Rising Star Missionary Baptist Church, also a member of the Mayor's Office of Community Affairs, 1104 Collins Avenue, Fresno, California, 93706. And so I think there's some confusion about the overlay versus the application. Right now we're discussing the overlay. We developed the overlay, just a few of us, admittedly. We didn't open it up to a broad community discussion. We've been working on this for over a year, and we developed an overlay that we presented back to the city. And the idea behind this overlay is to add restrictions that will help preserve the integrity of the Southwest Pacific Plan. And so just our desire with this text amendment that it would be adopted and recommended to council for approval to add further use restrictions on these properties that that make up the 92.5 acres that are up for rezoning, because what we don't want is these properties rezoned back to the industrial classification that they had before. And so the overlay is a way to put some restrictions in place so that the property owners can continue to move forward. They are already grandfathered in. What we want to do is not allow the rezone under the overlay to happen. And so we thought that this would be an option that we should consider. So I am asking that you strongly consider moving this forward, recommending it to council for consideration. We have worked with the mayor's administration. As far as I know, we have his support on this in order to try to reconcile the differences between the community and the applicants. Thank you.
Thank you. Please approach the podium, state your name and address.
Thank you. My name is Sylvester McQueen Hall. I'm president of Blue Ocean Development and Coast to Coast Petroleum. I'm the visionary of the West Creek Village Development Project in Southwest Fresno, where the State Center College Community Campus is going, and the community park, the city community park, along with the D.R. Hardin homes that you guys approved last week. I'm also the owner of the Valero on the corner of Elm and Jensen. I've been that owner for 20 years now. I'm also from Southwest Fresno, 65-year citizen. My family has a 70-year history there. I want to first say I'd like to acknowledge each and every one of you for your hard work and what you do. And I want to know that I know your hearts are dear in making sure that the community is protected. And even I was going to participate on Zoom, but I couldn't get in, so I thought some of these issues discussed tonight was so important, I better come down. Because a lot of these folks that are talking don't live there, haven't invested there, haven't spent their life analyzing what's best for Southwest Fresno. I'm part of a group that has over 1,000 years worth of experience in Southwest Fresno and understanding our past, our present, and where we want to go with the future. I'm also a member of the Southwest Pacific Steering Planning Committee. And the magnet core that everyone's talking about, I'm the primary developer and visionary of that magnet core. And I am actually a little bit in dismay because I didn't even know about this overlay. And I got folks that I love and care about on both sides of this issue. And the mayor and the director of planning, or my great friend, Pastor Lewis, and Mr., if you will, Bob, Mitchell, Mr. Mitchell, if you will, I'm on both sides of these folks' issue here. But no way this overlay should have came forward without the Southwest Pacific Committee members like Ms. Lynn talking about, who we all spent 3 years working with thousands of people, putting this plan together, and working with the Strategic Growth Council, even on TCC. And we understand Cal EnviroScreen 3.0 and 4.0 better than anyone else in the future and the health of the citizens of Southwest Fresno. And all of those citizens are minority citizens. And I like this board so much because you guys probably got family members and relatives that are going to be impacted by these decisions. So this is very important. And so not even understanding this overlay, I had to come down here and speak on it. Because beyond anything, I'm against the rezone. That's just the multi-conglomerates. You know, I'll explain about that later when they come up. But that's no big deal. But I can't be for an overlay that even our own citizens of Southwest Fresno and the Brotherhood didn't even get together to discuss with other Brotherhood, and got behind other Brotherhoods back and went and started working with the mayor and everyone else without even us knowing. That's why Michael Lynn expressed her concern. She spent 3 years of her life, and she worked on the general plan and the Southwest. And this plan is the extension of the general plan. And I mean, it is a great document. So I just want to leave it at that. You know, the horrible part about trying to transform
My
these
apologies, but you
neighborhoods.
have 15 seconds, okay?
Okay. The tough part about transforming these neighborhoods back into communities that we got the burden of doing, that all the folks before us had ulterior motives of these bad plans and put things in place, and now we got to try to clean them up. And so I admire your responsibility and want to help you get the information, help you make the great decisions you have to make going forward to protect the children and the folks that can't protect themselves in this environment. Thank you so much, and God bless you.
Thank you, I appreciate it. Please state your name and address, sir.
Good evening, Bob Mitchell, resident 93706. I too have worked on the specific plan for Southwest Fresno from its very inception, and I understand the premise of the plan.
Mr. Mitchell, 1 second. Maybe please, in the chambers, maybe please have it quiet in the chambers and respect the speaker. Thank you. Sorry about that.
Do I get my time back?
Yeah, definitely. I'll reset that for you, okay?
Thank you so much,
No, you're
Mr.
welcome.
Chair. I too worked on the specific plan and understand its intent. And the overlay is an intent to even strengthen that portion of the specific plan. There was nothing codified in that specific plan that would prevent those rezoning issue that has come up, if it is allowed to pass without the overlay, to have expansion. This initiative in the text amendment overlay codifies what can be there, what can't be there, and has specific prohibitives included in it to prevent any additional pollution. And I will repeat that. Any additional pollution by any business that wishes to be on that 92-acre spot. From noise, light, vehicle traffic, etc. That is included in this. That does not exist with the simple rezoning. So this is a much more stringent, a much stronger attempt to support the very idea, principles, and intent of the specific plan. Those of us who worked on this did so of our own volition. We gave up our time, countless hours in the months after we became aware of the rezone, so that we sought to do something to benefit our community, to make our community safer, to provide an opportunity for us as residents and our future generations to have a much healthier existence, a better life within our community by applying the principles of the specific plan in the overlay text amendment. If you read it carefully, you will find that the provisions within the plan are stricter and stronger than the simple rezone without it. And we're asking you to allow the initiation of the study of this text amendment to go forward, and hopefully, if a rezone should occur, that it will only be adopted with the provisions of this overlay. I thank you.
Thank you very much for your patience. Do we have any other members of the public who would like to speak who are in the chambers? Please state your name and address.
My name is Mitch M. Michino.
Do you want to go ahead and, if you, please, go ahead, just lower the microphone a little bit so we can hear you clearly. There you go.
Address is 2390 South Fruits. That property on my address. I live in Malibu, California, near Los Angeles. I bought the Southwest property, industrial properties, about 20 years ago. And after listening to those extreme opinions or desire by community, some residential members that don't want any industry come in, no noise, no smell, nothing. I didn't realize what kind of a city Fresno was when I bought these things. And last 15, 20 years, I've been really spending so much time and energy to clean up, beautify the place. Several months ago, I received 18 code violations from code enforcement. So I spent probably close to $100,000 to comply and beautify the place. But bottom line, as an industrial property owner, I can't find any tenant. City is almost taking my property without any compensations because city downzoned my property from industrial to office building now because of the smell, noise, the garbage. My property is very close to Foster Farms. My next the corporation is called Darling International. They produce pet foods. I'm sorry I was speaking too long, but basically, zoning issue is not clear-cut, 100% yes or no. You have to find the best and most valuable use of the property, balancing the different interests. And I'm sorry, my time is up?
No, you still have 1 minute.
Okay, any event. So rather than just, expressing our extreme opinion like President Putin in Russia, we have to find some different opinions, different use, and different desire of the community. So we can't even go extreme right, extreme left. So I hope, I'm sorry, I don't know anything about the overlay. Tonight is only a first night I'm exposed to. But I hope a community will come up with best plan. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. Do we have any other members within the chambers who would like to speak? All right, so now I'm going to open it up to, we'll go back to Zoom. Any individuals on Zoom who would like to speak, please raise your hand. We'll go ahead and let you speak. When you do, please state your name and address, and you have 3 minutes.
Thank you. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Oh, there you go. My name is Ivanka Saunders. I'm a policy advocate with Leadership Council for Justice and Accountability. We are in opposition of this consideration of this resolution to initiate a text amendment. Residents are not fooled by this attempt to disguise through a term of cleaner and greener overlay district. The words neighborhood and industry don't even go together. Oh, unless you are referring to a policy that is only going to impact the same communities of color, that you want to perpetuate the continual racist land use practices that allow for the next item on the agenda of rezoning the 92 acres of light industrial to be continued next to schools, homes, and other sensitive receptors. Pay attention to the paragraph B under section 1 that states that it shall be used exclusively in areas which are or were previously zoned for industrial uses. This is to allow for industrial uses in areas that the Southwest Pacific Plan has already changed to mixed use. To continue that sentence, which states that this overlay district will, quote, promote and incentivize transition from these uses to non-industrial uses, is a blatant lie. When will this city, and this county for that matter, understand that its days of racist land use decisions are nearing an end, especially when you have the State Attorney General's office watching us to see how poorly we have learned how to treat all communities equally. There are state laws that you continue to risk violating by making these quote unquote good old boy closed door decisions. Commissioners, if you haven't figured it out yet, the sole purpose of this text amendment is to get you to approve a plan that in case you don't approve the next item, the result will be the same, and that the developers will be able to continue to place and site industrial uses in a community of color, just like it's been doing for the last 70 years with permitted uses of warehouse and distributions, just like we see already in Southwest and South Central Fresno. On one other point, the city failed to do proper community meetings and robust community engagement within the impacted areas beyond the project review committee meetings, which aren't even properly publicized on the city's agenda calendar website. We are asking that you deny this consideration of a resolution. Don't lead with fear, community, in thinking that if we have to settle for this overlay out of fear of allowing light industrial to take over. The fact is, if you look at all the state land use CEQA type of laws that are being written right now, you have more power than you understand. Look outside the city of Fresno. And one other thing, if you notice when you say, oh, we have to have a happy middle ground, let gentrification, as there's no other place to continue to grow on this valley floor, and realize the land value of West Fresno is now more enticing than before, all of a sudden you are then going to see creative ways to truly make a change to get heavy industry out of the community. But until then, as long as the shades are darker, you're going to expect and think that we have to continue to accept less than. We're done accepting less than. The state, on all the things that we have seen in the last 5 years of this country, should let you know that we have more power as community and to make the rights from the wrongs of the past. Thank you.
Thank you. Let's go ahead and let the next member of the public speak. Please state your name, address. You have 3 minutes.
Good evening, Madeline Howard from Western Center on Law and Poverty on behalf of Central Valley Urban Institute. We're opposing this proposal, also opposing the related rezone proposal. I first want to note that the materials for this item were not posted until after 5 o'clock on Friday of a holiday weekend, so this did not provide adequate time for the public to review the proposal in advance of the comment deadline for this meeting. Central Valley Urban Institute opposed the earlier version of this overlay at project review committees, and a lot of the issues that were expressed there are still present with this proposal. For one thing, the list of properties that was provided in the planning director's presentation is a tiny map that no one can really see. And the materials for this meeting did not include a list of parcels or anything that gives the public a meaningful opportunity to identify what properties are impacted. Despite that, it is clear that this proposal is targeted at the large parcel in Southwest Fresno that's also the subject of the rezone. And as the prior commenter referenced, it's clear that the owners of that property are trying to have 2 opportunities to put more industry in this already heavily impacted neighborhood that is already subject to so much pollution. Also, as prior commenters have referenced, the community really came together to create the Southwest Specific Plan, which intentionally phased out industry in this area to protect the public health. And this overlay, like the rezone, goes in the opposite direction. It directly goes against the community goals of reducing industry, reducing pollution, and protecting people's health. In addition, the Southwest Specific Plan is actually codified. It is incorporated into the general plan for the city. And so by going against the specific plan, the city would be violating state law, which requires consistency with the general plan. There are also state laws that require the city to promote the development of housing. And so by changing the zoning so that there could not be housing and instead would be more industry, the city would also be violating state law. I also want to address the name of the proposed overlay district. It would not create cleaner and greener communities. Putting that name on this overlay doesn't make that true. It actually would allow more pollution. It's been presented as requiring a reduction, but that's not actually accurate if you look closely. And I would really encourage the Planning Commission members to look very closely at this. We commented on the prior version of the overlay district that it didn't mention air pollution at all and only talked about light and other issues. Now there's been an addition, but it's very narrow. It's only referring to particulate matter. As we discuss in our comment letter, there are a wide variety of types of air pollution that come from industry that are extremely harmful to people's health. And having this ordinance, or the overlay district only address a very narrow range of air pollution would freely allow industry to be developed that is very harmful to the public health and would increase the rates of asthma even more than they already are in this community. And as was discussed in the presentation, the Planning Commission would never get to see that change. So new industry could come in, be very harmful to the community, and there would be no further review. In addition to being extremely harmful to the community—
Ms. Madeline, I'm going to let you speak for another 2 minutes just because Mr. Payne and Ms. Flores went ahead and provided their time for you, okay?
Thank you very much. I also wanted to point out that the staff report for this item actually identifies that this is not compliant with state law. The staff report notes that they cannot make a required finding for consideration of this issue because of the state law requiring the promotion of housing. Finally, the proposal also violates anti-discrimination laws that are both in federal and state law because it would subject a community of color to even more industrial hazards. I'll stop there. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Let's go ahead and let the next individual speak. Please raise your hand, state your name, address, and you have 3 minutes.
Hello, good evening. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. My name is June Stanfield. I live on the 2600 block of South Ivy, which is 1 block off of Jensen and Elm Avenue, which is one of the main concerns is why this issue is coming up. I was one of those community members that served in that Southwest planning. And I see this as a Pandora box that's being opened for these companies, specifically Waste Management, who started this. This is going to allow them to remain in business as usual, if not provide even more pollution to this area. It is a hazard to my health and to my community. That place, I pass by there quite often. It is not a good place for our community. That was allowed there over 20 years ago when the city of Fresno did not care about our community. Now that we are under TCC money and trying to clean up our Southwest area, that business should not be allowed to continue as usual. We are trying to revitalize Elm Avenue. You have a clinic across the street, senior citizen development around the corner. This is not appropriate. And I will strongly advise the committee to rethink this and allowing this Pandora box to be open because I don't see any good coming from it. Thank you.
Thank you, Miss. Do we have any other individuals on Zoom who would like to speak?
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes. Go ahead and state your name,
Hi.
address, and you have 3 minutes.
Okay, thank you. Good evening, Commissioner. Thank you for allowing me to speak this evening. My name is Kimberly McCoy. I am the project director from Fresno Building Healthy Communities, and we are strongly against the overlay, against the cleaner and greener neighborhood overlay for the following reasons. This will go entirely against the work that the CSC is doing through the AB 617, which I am a member, funding to reduce greenhouse and other pollutants in these communities. This also violates housing laws, AB 6886 and SB 330 that respectively require governments to firmly further fair housing, meaning they need to be proactively working to address the inequities in BPOC communities. And SB 330 limits downsizing of sites from high density to alternative uses. To allow this plan, this overlay to go through, which is give the Southeast Fresno. Neighbors have come out, residents have come out time after and time again stating that they do not want these type of industries in their neighborhoods. They call it a good neighbor or a bad neighbor. Industrial facilities are bad neighbors. What are good neighbors is grocery stores. What are good neighbors is high-paying jobs. What are good neighbors is being able to purchase a single-family home, being able to become a homeowner. Those are good neighbors. Those are things that the residents in these communities have stated time. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Do we have any other individuals on Zoom?
There are no hands raised in the Zoom.
All right. Can we have staff or city speak, answer some of these questions that the public brought up?
Sure, I would be happy to answer any questions that the commission would like specifically answered. Again, this is under the development code. The planning commission, the director, or the city council can initiate a text amendment. So it is not applying any of these criteria to a specific land use or a location at this time. It's not even adopting this text amendment at this time. It's just initiating, allowing for further conversation. So in terms of outreach, obviously, the intent would be to go back to each of the district committees. We've heard a number of speakers who would like for it to go back to the original Southwest Specific Plan Committee, which is not in existence any longer. However, there is a desire and work toward creating an implementation committee for the Southwest Fresno Specific Plan, so they would be able to review it as well. And we would be happy to hold any kind of public input sessions to get input on making it a better and stronger document to strengthen what Pastor Lewis and Mr. Mitchell said in terms of trying to make sure that across the city, not just in one location, but across the city, that we're very conscious of when we expand from the narrow land use to the land classification, that we're really evaluating those specific land uses on a project by project basis and not just broadly, broad brush across the city. In terms of, there were a lot of comments on the next item, which I would like to hold for the next item because I don't want this to get confused with the rezone application, which is separate and apart. In terms of businesses right now, I think one of the questions or comments was in terms of continuation of existing business. So under our current legal non-conforming section of the code in Article 4, it is very clear that a land use can continue in perpetuity. So it can be sold, it can be handed down, it can continue forever in its existing land use. But if that particular business closed or changed its operations to a different type of use, they would not be necessarily permitted to continue operations. So there would need to be an application to the city to determine whether or not it complied. If it did not comply with the new land use designation, it would not be allowed. So really this is to allow for kind of a broader range of uses. And again, there's always room for improvement. The first time we initiated, we got a lot of really great, thoughtful feedback, and I believe that we would with this as well, and continue to work with members of the Southwest Fresno Specific Plan Steering Committee who are interested in really strengthening this to make it the intended use.
Yeah, it's good. I think kind of hearing like the public's comment, that will probably be my biggest concern is, if we go ahead and move forward with recommending this consideration, having the city reach out to a lot of these groups that are within the city, within that area, to get them involved too. So that's my comments. Do we have any commissioners who have questions for the city or would like to make any comments or motions?
So I'll just ask a question that's already been answered, but just to re-clarify. The staff recommendation is for us not to recommend this draft ordinance for approval to the city council. That's not what's on the table. Rather, it's for us to initiate the process, which would send this back to the project review committees as well as solicit additional community input.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
And that community input, as you already said, could lead to additional changes and improvements to the current draft ordinance.
Yes, that is correct.
Okay. Yeah, one of the comments that stood out to me in terms of potential improvements was to expand the types of pollutants that are included underneath the industrial use classification, as well as underneath the uses that will require a conditional use permit, because there was a comment saying that the conception of pollutants was fairly narrow. So just that's one suggestion, is just expanding that to ensure that we're covering all the types of pollutants that that we should be covering.
Do we have any questions or comments from the commission? No. Do we have any motions by the commission? Well, before I do ask for a motion from the commission, I do want to make a comment that if we do decide to go ahead and recommend this consideration, just because I hear a lot of frustration, I think the frustration is driven more by confusion of the kind of the, you know, I'm a firm believer that if the process is fair, then people would be more willing to accept outcomes. And I think if we decide to go ahead and recommend this for consideration, I do strongly encourage the city to reach out to a lot of the local individuals within that area to have that discussion. Ultimately, it's a partnership, and I think everyone needs to see it that way, because at the end of the day, whether it's a city or those individuals who live in that area, we all want to do what's best for that community and make sure that we build it for our next generation, for our kids too. So if we go ahead and decide to recommend this consideration, please, if you're from that area, reach out to the city staff. Make sure you do participate in any kind of gatherings that they may have. Do we have a motion by the commission?
I'll make a motion to recommend the initiation of this subject, again with the proviso that there's an extraordinary amount of public outreach, and hopefully that the public reaches out too, so that we really get a fair sampling of what is felt by the community. So I'd like to recommend that we move forward to initiate the project.
I second that.
We have a motion by Commissioner Bray. We have a second by Commissioner Diaz. Please take vote.
Commissioner Fuentes?
Yes.
Commissioner Wagner?
Yes.
Commissioner Diaz?
Yes.
Commissioner Bray?
Yes.
Commissioner Hardy?
Yes.
And Chair Vang?
Yes, motion passes. The next item, we have ID 22872. This is for the consideration of plan amendment application number P2001665. Let's please have staff present.
Okay. Good evening, Chair and Commissioners. My name is Rob Holt with the Planning and Development Department, and tonight staff brings back to the Commission consideration of Plan Amendment and Rezone Application Number P20-01665 and the related environmental finding for the addendum to the final program EIR for the Southwest Fresno specific plan. Thank you. So this project was originally presented to the Planning Commission on February 3rd, 2021, and continued on that date to the March 17th, 2021 Planning Commission meeting. And the purpose of that was for staff analysis to opposition and community outreach from the applicant, which included a neighborhood meeting. The project has since been referred back to staff at 3 separate Planning Commission meetings. One on April 7th, 2021, one on June 2nd, 2021, and the most previous that the Planning Commission saw this was September 1st, 2021. I do want to discuss that this project is subject to Senate Bill 330. One of the limitations of SB 330 is not allowing applications for plan amendments and rezones to lower or remove residential density. The only way in which this could occur would be to submit a separate application for a plan amendment and rezone to increase the net density loss elsewhere based on the zone's district's maximum density allowed. The loss of residential density capacity not only applies to just residential land uses, but mixed-use land uses as well. The subject property is located within the neighborhood mixed-use planned land use designation, which currently allows for the density of 16 dwelling units per acre. And with a 92.53 acres, there would be a net loss of 1,481 dwelling units. Currently, there has been no application submitted, nor any communication towards this being completed from the applicant on a separate plan amendment and rezone in order to offset the loss of residential capacity. With that, staff does acknowledge that it's been some time since this has been back to the Planning Commission, and there's been a few commissioners that are new that haven't seen this yet, so we are going to continue forward with our presentation. So the proposed plan amendment and rezone subject area is bounded by Highway 41 to the east, Vine Avenue to the north, Elm Avenue to the west, and the Chester-Sampson Avenue alignment to the south, bisected by Annandale Avenue. The current plan land use designation, as stated before, is neighborhood mixed use, and the proposed change would be to the light industrial plan land use designation and zone district. The subject area was originally located in the light industrial zone district prior to the adoption of the Southwest Fresno specific plan, which was adopted in October of 2017, which as part of that plan was rezoned to neighborhood mixed use. So the applicant is requesting that this area be changed back to the light industrial zone district due to the subject area being majorly developed, with a majority of the existing uses and buildings being more consistent with the industrial use classification. Looking at the logical transition of land uses surrounding the subject area, there is a large swath of heavy industrial land uses east of 41, with neighborhood mixed use and community commercial uses to the west, followed by single-family residential. The general plan defines light industrial as a buffer between heavy industrial and other land uses and otherwise generally located in areas such as along railroads and freeways. It is noted that the Council District 3 Project Review Committee recommended approval of this project 4 votes to 1 on August 25th, 2020. As mentioned before, the neighborhood meeting, the applicant did hold a neighborhood meeting on March 1st, 2021. Notices were sent to all property owners within 2,000 feet of the subject property. 50 participants attended and 16 spoke in opposition of the project. Concerns of the public included minimal vegetation of the subject area, existing odor from the recycling center, and the potential for future air quality, traffic, and pollution issues. The public also expressed their unified efforts put forth by the Southwest Fresno Specific Plan community in collaborating on policies to eliminate industrial zoning. The public stated that the purpose for the proposed rezone is unjustified, not credible, or substantiated. The Southwest Fresno Specific Plan community is unconvinced that the rezone is necessary for financing and/or investment purposes, and there is concern of no evidence to substantiate this claim. And the Southwest Fresno Specific Plan community asked the applicant group to provide a list of all owners and respective acreages each interest owns within the boundaries of the subject area. So that said, staff recommends the commission provide one of the 3 of the following recommended options. Option 1, recommend denial to the Fresno City Council by making the motions provided in the staff report. Option 2, recommend approval to the council with the motions provided in the staff report. Or option 3, approval to the City Council with conditions by making the motions in the staff report. And I want to expand just slightly on option 2. The commission may make this recommendation subject to the findings, including as Exhibit F to the staff report, or adopt its own alternative findings. In any case, should the commission make those findings, approval of the plan amendment and rezone application shall be subject to the applicant's compliance with SB 330, The same goes with option 3. Although the commission with option 3, the commission will need to include any recommended conditions within the motion for the recommendation. That concludes staff's presentation.
Do we have any questions from the commission?
Yes, I have a few questions. So is this the same application that was submitted in January of last year? No changes?
Correct.
Okay. And from my understanding, the current application does not call for any specific industrial expansion. However, if the application were approved, it would permit such expansion, correct?
It would permit whatever is allowed for in the light industrial, although there is a policy within that that would, well, it's basically just limited to this area, so yes.
And you touched on this a bit earlier, but...
Well, I apologize. Let me expand upon that. There are limitations within that that would, it couldn't be any more non-polluting than what's already there. So technically, you can't just say an expansion. It would have to, it could be if it complied with that policy. So.
Okay, so just revisiting something you touched on earlier. So according to the municipal code findings submitted by staff, the required findings for this application cannot be made because there is no concurrent application submitted to offset the potential net loss of residential housing capacity. Is that correct?
Correct. We would have to have, well, it would be subject to compliance with SB 330. So making those findings would then, it's making those findings subject that another plan amendment rezone is submitted and approved in a similar fashion as this one at the same time at council. So you would need to have, basically you're saying, yes, we are doing the findings and it's also subject to compliance with SB 330.
So a couple related questions. So if the application were denied, and then in the future the city council were to enact the overlay district ordinance that we discussed earlier, the applicants could then submit a new application for an overlay pursuant to the new ordinance, correct?
Correct.
Okay. And on the reverse side, if the current application were approved as is, it would not be subject to the additional limitations and conditions for light industrial uses which are set forth in that proposed ordinance, correct?
It would be a recommendation to council, so it depends what goes to council first, I would say. But if it were to go prior to that in council, that would be correct.
Okay, thank you.
Do we have any other questions from the commission? I see none. Thank you.
Thank you.
Do we have the applicant?
Good evening, Commissioners, Chair Vang. My name is John Kinsey, 265 East River Park Circle. And while we're waiting for the presentation that we have, I do want to make a few introductory remarks. One of the things that really stuck out to me when I heard the discussion on the last item was the desire for public outreach in connection with the text amendment. And the reason why we're here today is because back in 2017, that outreach didn't occur with respect to the landowners on Elm Avenue. We wouldn't be here today if that outreach had occurred. I wanted to also discuss briefly, I think, a couple potential misconceptions. There have been some articles in the media about this project. This isn't an instance where the landowners can engage, want to engage in heavy industrial land uses. This has never been a heavy industrial site. It's been light industrial, and the light industrial land uses have been there, and that's what they want to maintain. So basically logistics companies, GlaxoSmithKline, and that are clean, and they're going to continue to get cleaner with electrification of fleets. In addition, I want to make clear that this is not a request to expand. In fact, the practical limitations with this property, this 92 acres, it's all built out. There's not room to expand. The businesses are there, and they want to be able to keep on doing what they're doing, hence the reason why we're here this evening, to try to get them in a state where they can lawfully continue to do what they're going to do without impact to their businesses and their properties and their livelihoods. And I have with me tonight several of the landowners who have been directly affected by the action in 2017. They include Jason Clear from Buzz Oats. He's going to be speaking tonight. They include Joseph Kalpikoff of Mid-Valley. He's going to be speaking tonight as well. In addition, in the audience, we have Steve Brock from SDG, and Tim Mitchell from Span Construction. So they've all been there, invested in this community, and I wanted you to know that they're here. In addition, we have some consultants, primarily to address the issues that were raised by the community and this commission previously in some prior meetings. And that includes Alan Sacco from ESA. He's an environmental consultant. In addition, we have some members of the public who can address some of the more particular issues about why the grandfathering provisions, the legal non-conforming use provisions, just don't work for us. And that includes Dennis Woods from USB, a local lending institution I think you all are probably familiar with, in addition to John Fondale from JLL. He's a leasing expert and can talk about those impacts. I'm sorry, oh, here we go. All right, so we're here talking about 92 acres, approximately, in southwest Fresno. Again, these are fully developed properties with no room to grow. The land users are seeking to go back to light industrial zoning. No new construction, no new land uses. They simply want to preserve what's there. I'm sorry. All right, so prior to the early 2000s, this property was a dairy uses, and there was actually a lot of contamination in the ground. The city wanted the property to be redeveloped and to be beautified, enhanced, and to bring jobs to the area. They went out and they pursued developers to come in and build new uses on these properties. And the landowners here today, they not only were the original people who were here developing these properties, they stuck with the community and they've remained landowners since that time. And between the early 2000s and the mid-2010s, this was fully developed. They invested hundreds of millions of dollars in these particular properties, and they have thousands of employees with good paying jobs, most of whom are Fresnans. They helped fund improvements to Elm Avenue. So they contributed to that effort in the early 2000s. This is where the contamination was. They paid to remediate this site to make sure that the residents wouldn't be affected by the negative soils and negative water qualities and those contaminants. They helped fund and pave the way for commercial uses in the area, much needed commercial uses in the area, including grocery uses. If it weren't for some of the efforts to bring, for example, the Kearney Palm Shopping Center, this would be an area that would be a food desert. But they ultimately, through their funds, helped make this become a reality. So I want to provide a video overview, and I'm sorry, could you hit the play button for me, please? So this provides a general overview of the site. On the southern bottom part of the picture, that's not the properties at issue here. They start with the warehouses. And as you can see, these are clean properties. They're well maintained. They're not dirty. And they're adjacent to State Route 41 and adjacent to those heavy industrial uses on the other side of 41. They provide a buffer between the heavy industrial uses, which these are not, and the residential and commercial uses to the west. So we're passing over the Span properties, the Buzz Oats properties right now. And then we're coming up on SDG, the GlaxoSmithKline. And they also include businesses such as IFCO, Barney Butter, Mondelez Foods, which formerly known as Nabisco, and Mid-Valley Recycling on the upper left-hand side. Now these properties are well maintained, they're landscaped, they're new, and they're used by several local and national employers. We're here because back in 2017, the land was rezoned to neighborhood mixed use, and their businesses are not authorized in the neighborhood mixed use zoning district. That's primarily residential and some limited commercial uses. You heard about this being a 3-year process. Now, during most of that process, this property was continued to slated to be light industrial. It changed very late in the process. Now, my clients, even though this process was a 3-year process, they were not invited to participate in any steering committee. They didn't even know that there was this process being undertaken. They didn't get notice of this, a letter from the city saying, hey, we are going to rezone your property. Come here and give us your opinions. The landowners didn't get that. The landowners didn't get that, and we have the proof.
Excuse me.
My clients...
My apologies.
Sure.
No, can we please?
Can I?
No.
My clients
please.
weren't a stakeholder.
You're going to have time to speak to. Okay.
Excuse me, I need to interrupt.
Yes.
I'm going to have to recuse myself, so.
Okay, thank you.
Let's go ahead and let's wait until Commissioner Bray exits the room. Let's please be respectful of each other's time. Okay.
And I think the proof of that is, had my clients been aware of this process, I can guarantee you they would have been here in 2017. They would have been here in front of the Planning Commission. They would have been in front of the City Council. And as soon as they found out about this, they started working with the city, attempting to work cooperatively to get this zoning back. And that's why we're here. One of the things I want to show you is during 2016, 2017, my clients were getting several inquiries from national tenants. And as part of that process, they have to do their due diligence. It's an important part of the leasing process. So the tenants contact the city and they say, hey, city, what's our zoning? During the whole time the Southwest Pacific Plan process was being undertaken, the city was sending letters to my clients that said, hey, your property's zoned light industrial. And in fact, in one instance, the city sent a letter to my clients on the exact same day that the City Council was considering the Southwest Pacific Plan that rezoned them. And that letter said, directed to the prospective tenant as well as my client, it said, hey, you're light industrial. So my clients had no idea that this was going on. So we've been engaged in this process for many years. As you heard from Mr. Holt, we've had hearings since 2020. In fact, I think that the neighborhood meeting was one of the first meetings that we had kind of under Zoom. So we were just figuring out how Zoom was working back then. We conducted neighborhood meetings. We took the comments to heart that we received from the Planning Commission, and we did provide those neighborhood meetings. We had the district committee meeting, and we've been up here with the Planning Commission. We provided tours to members of the community that have asked. In fact, I think that's happened on about 3 separate occasions. And obviously, the city has suggested that we work through Oliver Baines as a liaison with the community, and we did endeavor to work with him through that process. Now, we weren't involved in this last iteration of the text amendment. In fact, we hadn't heard anything about this process going on. We just found out about it a couple days ago with the text amendment. But that being said, we do think that our project should be undertaken as a distinct, separate approval. Now, there were concerns raised at the public meetings, and we want to make sure that we've responded to those. First, there were concerns regarding environmental impacts. There were concerns that the applicants would develop new, more intense industrial uses. There were concerns, in fact, many statements raised saying, hey, you provide no benefit to Southwest Fresno. More residential developments needed. And then lastly, there were comments that, hey, since these properties are grandfathered and you can continue forever according to certain provisions of the code, why do you even need your zoning back? So I wanted to make sure that we address those because I'm sure that members of the public are concerned about those issues. So first, the rezone isn't going to result in any new environmental impacts. There's an addendum that was provided under CEQA, prepared for this project by LSA, who regularly does work for the city on environmental documents, and they found that there wouldn't be any new significant environmental impacts. Now why is that? This property is fully built out. We're not seeking any new land uses. We're not seeking to expand any existing uses. This is solely about getting to continue with what we have. And if you look at what the current zoning is, neighborhood mixed use, ironically, neighborhood mixed use actually has far more vehicle trips than light industrial, in particular warehousing. And when you talk about air quality impacts, one of the things about California is we have a very active California Air Resources Board. Every year, the emissions for trucks go down exponentially. And today, for example, the emissions from trucks are a small percentage of what they were 20 years ago. And in fact, California Air Resources Board is going through a process right now to require electrification of all trucking facilities and all trucks. So these logistics and warehouse uses continue to get cleaner and cleaner every year. So again, these are existing facilities that are going to continue to get cleaner and cleaner. And they're very clean uses now. And in fact, a couple weeks ago, I was listening in on the Baceto project, and there were a lot of comments about some of the cutting-edge environmental kind of benefits that they were providing and some things that they had added onto their property. Well, the only real differences between us and Baceto from an environmental standpoint are, one, we're an existing industrial use, a light industrial use, whereas they're a completely new development project. And two, we incorporated many of those environmentally friendly measures 10 or 15 years ago when we first built. I also wanted to direct you to some of the statements made by the Attorney General Rob Banto when he was here in town. He said, "We believe that environmental justice and economic development can occur at the same time. They're not mutually exclusive." And that's important here. See, back in 2017, when the Southwest Pacific Plan was approved, it eliminated all light industrial, in fact, all industrial land use generally from the Southwest Pacific Plan. And today, there is no land in the entire Southwest Pacific Plan that has industrial zoning. And that's unique. If you look at the land use map for the city of Fresno, the Southwest Pacific Plan is currently one of the only areas that doesn't have any industrial zoning. But even the Attorney General says that the two can be compatible. What matters is the quality of development. And as you can see, Elm Avenue does implement the best practices that have been recommended by the Attorney General. And that includes physical vegetative buffers, adequate on-site parking, loading docks that are faced away from sensitive receptors, lighting that's directed to the interior of the site, businesses that are kept free of trash and debris, and rezoning to ensure, and the reason why the rezone is needed, and we'll talk a little bit about this later, is that we need electrification of fleets, on-site equipment, and electrification and infrastructure to get cleaner. And those are all things that the Attorney General is promoting and that we agree with. We understand that there is a history of heavy industrial use in Southwest Fresno that's negative, that's been a problem. We're not denying that. That's not us, however. We're existing buildings that I think have demonstrated that we are committed to and in fact have implemented best practices. Now, again, the landowners are just seeking to maintain those existing uses. They're not engaging in heavy industrial land uses, and they cannot, under the light industrial zoning district, do that. This isn't, we cannot develop, for example, rendering plants or slaughterhouses. In fact, we've currently communicated to both the city and the community that we'd be willing to agree that we would never develop things like shooting ranges, salvage yards, to the extent that makes a difference. And there was also concern about these businesses not contributing to the community. Well, guess what? The initial investment to even bring these businesses in, to bring the development in, was over $100 million, and they're continuing to invest millions and millions of dollars into this city, and they've stayed here in this city. They provide employment for thousands of Fresnans, good-paying jobs. They contribute to the tax base of the city. They make the pie bigger so we can fund things like, get adequate funds from Measure P, for example, and Measure Z. Sorry. And, I think one of the things that you should keep in mind is this property really isn't ideal for residential. It's right next to Southwest 41. It's adjacent to heavy industrial. This is a great buffer, a great looking buffer between residential and commercial and the heavy industrial to the east. Finally, why is the neighborhood mixed use zoning an issue if you have the ability under the grandfathering provisions to continue? So, first of all, the first thing that tenants do is they look to see what the zoning of the property is. And if it's inconsistent, they look elsewhere. And right now, it's tenants and brokers from throughout the western United States are aware of this issue. And it makes Fresno a lot less marketable that we have issues like this, that we have inconsistent zoning, that we have people who have had their zoning taken away from them. The inconsistent zoning makes it impossible to get conventional financing to do things like develop clean infrastructure. If a building is unused for only a moderate period of time, 90 days, you lose that grandfathering. And in today's leasing environment, for example, during the downturn, there were periods where, industrial warehouses, for example, logistics companies went unused for far longer than 90 days, and that puts everything in jeopardy. And it's far more difficult to sell properties with legal nonconforming status, and frankly, the value plummets. They can't sell these properties because they have a warehouse on the property that would need to be knocked down to even think about developing it. And here we don't have, this isn't a place where residential units should go. It just doesn't make sense in this location. So with that, I wanted to introduce some of the other members of the team. I mentioned them at the front end of the presentation, and I'd like to call up, and I'm sorry about the misspelling, Alan Sacco from ESA Associates. Thank you.
Good evening. Thank you for allowing me to speak. My name is Alan Sacco, and full disclosure, I do not live in Fresno. I am from Los Angeles. My address is 725 South Pixel Street. And I work for Environmental Science Associates. I'm an environmental consultant. I've had about 20 years of experience, and I currently serve as our Director for Air, Noise, and Climate. I just wanted to touch on a few issues relating to environmental topics, particularly with air quality, just to provide information to you so that you as a planning commission can make as informed a decision as you can. So the first topic I'll bring up is something that was just previously discussed, is the neighborhood mixed-use designation on the site. It would permit some types of uses that are commonly known as sensitive receptors. These include residential uses, clinics, schools, daycare facilities, and so forth. Locating these types of sensitive uses on the subject property would place them in proximity to State Route 41. And with proximity to a freeway, there are potential concerns relating to the health effects of traffic emissions and so forth. In particular, air quality health effects would need to be considered when locating these types of sensitive land uses. And in fact, there is a guidance document from the California Air Resources Board that recommends that you look into these issues if they're located within 500 feet. And the site would permit those types of uses within that distance. Other issues may potentially arise, including noise. Freeways generate noise, and when I viewed an aerial imagery, there did not appear to be any freeway sound barriers, and so locating sensitive uses, in particular residential uses, there may need to be consideration in regards to mitigating those noise impacts to those noise-sensitive uses, including sound barriers or things like upgraded windows, or even prohibiting operable windows on the freeway-facing sides of such developments. Another concern I wanted to just bring up to you is, again, something else that has been mentioned before. The site does act as a buffer to transition from those heavy industrial uses to the east of 41, and then transitioning to the light industrial use, and then transitioning to the commercial and residential uses to the west. The project site also does provide easy access for vehicles entering and leaving the on-site facilities to 41 as well as 99, and the haul routes allow the trucks and other vehicles to pass by as few sensitive receptors as possible on their way to the freeways and points beyond. And third, I just wanted to bring up, again, regulations that are in place from the California Air Resources Board to reduce emissions from diesel equipment and vehicles. As was mentioned earlier, there was what's known as the truck and bus regulation. This regulation required the phase-in of diesel particulate filters, as well as the turnover to model year 2010 or newer engines. Model year 2010 is specified in the regulation because that's the year manufacturers were required to make engines that meet the most stringent Air Resources Board emission standards. There were some key milestone years for this regulation. For example, in 2020, the older trucks with model years in the late 90s were required to upgrade to this 2010 standard beginning in 2020. And then another key milestone is 2023, which is just around the corner, where all trucks model years 2009 and older need to upgrade to the 2010 standard. Another regulation is called the Advanced Clean Trucks Regulation, and this is an ARB regulation to accelerate the large-scale transition to zero emissions trucks for medium and heavy-duty vehicles. This regulation also has key milestone years with starting in 2024 and then phasing in over the next 10 years to 2035, requirements for the manufacture and sale of an increasing percentage of zero-emission trucks, both medium and light, throughout that time frame. And so I just wanted to bring up this information, as these are regulations that will reduce emissions from land uses that are currently existing at the site and will have a beneficial environmental impact. So I thank you for this time. Thank you very much.
Good evening. My name is Jason Clear, and I am with the ownership group of 2825 and 2855 South Elm, which includes 2 buildings totaling 517,000 square feet, leased and occupied by 6 different tenants. Imagine that the zoning of your home was changed and you only knew when you pulled the permit. We've been discussing this for 4 years, so I don't want to bore you with a very long speech, and I'll try to keep to the pertinent bullet points. The City of Fresno Redevelopment Agency 20 years ago came out to Sacramento to meet with our founder, Buzz Oates, and asked us to come out here to build these. It was a request by the City of Fresno. So we answered the call, and we built buildings starting in 2001, and then our neighboring owners built it up into 2018. There is no planned vertical construction. We are built out. It's a finished business park. It was at the time of this plan amendment. The 15 parcels associated with this application pay nearly $850,000 a year in property taxes. Since these properties are in the City of Fresno Redevelopment Agency zone, most of it goes directly to the city, rather than typical property taxes, which also go to the county and state. I estimate that we've spent over $14 million in the last 20 years in property taxes. Much to some people's surprise, no one asked us to participate in the Southwest Fresno plan. I like John Kinsey, but I don't want to pay him hundreds of thousands of dollars a year to represent us in this matter. I would rather have been here in 2017. Zoning changes typically happen when land values exceed that of building values. That's how it normally happens. In our case, land values represent less than 10%. We were asked to meet with the community members, and we did. We were asked to collaborate with community members on potential solutions. We proposed a solution in the form of a text amendment, and we received no response. Our leases, like typical commercial leases, expire every 3 to 5 years. And over the last 20 years, we've turned over several leases. All have been within the guidelines of light industrial. If we give it long enough, these buildings will be vacant under the current neighborhood mixed-use zoning. Tenants will not wait for a long process. Now more than ever, from site selection to operation, it's a max of 60 days. If we have to wait any longer, they will go to other neighboring cities. They will not stick around. You know, as John mentioned earlier, I had a call from a tenant representative in Dallas who represents a corporate user. These are good jobs. These are well-paying jobs. And he is now looking in Visalia rather than Fresno. No buyer is going to purchase these buildings with the current zoning. It just will not happen at a reasonable market value. The reason for that is when you buy these buildings, you buy them to lease them. If you cannot lease them and earn a fair rate of return on your money, you will not buy them. Similar to buyers and tenants, lenders will not take the risk with these assets. Properties where the physical design and intended use do not conform to the current zoning. Industrial is a critical component of society. If you are wearing it, if you are eating it, if you are looking at it, if you are talking into it, there is a very, very high likelihood that it came from a warehouse. Taking functional buildings out of the supply chain does not help the chain. Neither does crippling inflation. And you can ask families in Fresno about that. Prior to the Southwest Pacific Plan, 36 acres was zoned heavy industrial, 108 acres was zoned light industrial. Our 92 acres represented 3.3% of 2,800 acres. I do not believe that 3.3% of anything is an overconcentration. Now there are 0 acres of industrial land in Southwest Fresno. According to CoStar Property Analytics, 30% of the total industrial inventory of Fresno is located in Northeast and Northwest Fresno. Southwest Fresno had 7%. We've heard from community members that they feel that over the last 10 years that Southwest Fresno has been a dumping ground for industrial development. I disagree with the comment. If you look at the statistics, Fresno in general, as a whole, over the last 10 years, has only added 2.9 square feet per capita. Some of your neighboring counties, such as San Joaquin, has added 36.1 square feet per capita. California Air Resources Board adopted a control plan in 2000. Since that time, CARB has implemented a program which has in many cases far exceeded the diesel risk reduction goals. Truck fleets are going electric. It is starting now. The zoning of your home changed. You can't sell it because the buyer's intended use does not conform. You can't refinance because the risk is too high for a potential lender. You can't rent it due to zoning regulations. You can't improve it because you can't pull a permit. You can gift your home to your children, but guess what? They're going to be faced with the same dilemma. You are later told that you should have read in the Fresno Bee that a specific plan was underway and that you should have participated. I would just like to know how you would feel in that matter. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Dennis Woods. I'm the founding chairman and president of United Security Bank. We're headquartered at 2126 Inyo Street in downtown Fresno. That's where I go to work every day. And across from the new convention center at 855 M Street, I have a branch office. We are the only bank headquartered in downtown Fresno. If you go around the city, especially in downtown, every ugly building that's been rebuilt, we did. The Bitwise buildings, the PG&E at the north of the mall, the failed Butterfield's Brewery, where is my corporate headquarters now. I heard some of the people saying that the West Side has been marginalized for many years, not by me. As soon as I got out of college, I bought the Esquire Apartments on San Joaquin in South Thorne, across from Chandler Airport when it had open ditches and no sidewalks. I collected the rent and mowed the lawn every Saturday for 35 years. And talking about good neighbors, our stores, Kearney Palm Shopping Center, our bank did it. It was tougher than this is. My developer didn't have enough money, That was a blighted junk lot, square lot. So I sold the corner that was my collateral where Burger King sits today on C Street, and they used that for collateral. The city still said, no, it's not enough collateral. I don't know why. It was a useless piece of property. They were giving them for $1. Why do they need millions? Anyway, then the city made a large police substation, which is good for that center, and it's why it's in great shape to this day. The city still said, no, you don't have enough. What they talked about, they didn't want to have a shopping center in West Fresno. That's true. This is the first and still the only one in West Fresno. That was happening. I went to my customer, Table Mountain Rancheria, and I said, I need your help to invest in West Fresno. They came up with the other money, and we built Kearney Palm Shopping Center. It's a great success, and it's for the people that are complaining. Also, when the Rotary Club was going to rebuild the West Fresno Boys and Girls Club, I said, I won't give you a couple $1,000s, but I'll loan you the money while you do the fundraiser because it's going to take you years, not months. And we did that. So we've been a good steward. We've been here for 35 years. We financed the SDG, the Glaxo International Credit Tenant. That is good for Fresno. It helps bring more people, just like Amazon. As much as people don't like them, it's good because it brings in more successful national tenants. It lifts all of our property values. But when we did that, we got started, we found out that property was contaminated. We're not allowed to do loans on contaminated property, but we have a good relationship with SDG. We finished that project. It's been a great project, but I think I'm supposed to talk about mixed-use zoning. It is true what you've heard. We would not make that loan today. If you lose a tenant for 90 days, they could say no more light industrial. That's my collateral for my loan. It could be worthless. And kind of the trap we got in downtown Fresno, all those high-rise buildings that are still boarded up and blighted today, all the warehouses that are bitwise now. There are no banks competing with us. I won't be here forever, so we have an opportunity to fix something that works. It won't be expanded. You saw from the pictorial, that's got to be the cleanest industrial park anywhere. Can't be polluted. You sure can't put houses against the freeway, or you shouldn't. And so, since it's built out and grandfathered, changing the zoning of that small parcel of light industrial, I think is an appropriate thing to do, because there's another national tenant that would like to come in here. I cannot give them the money to redo that half of the building. If you get the zoning fixed, we can move forward. All of those things bring the jobs that we're all looking for. And so that's the kind of an industrial park that will bring national credit tenants. We don't have a bunch of them, so we should do it. And we kind of have a problem in this town. When I did the tire part across from the old Orange Avenue dump on 99 with the giant sign, that was contaminated property too. So when you find a crazy banker that will work through those problems, you shouldn't probably make it too difficult. Anyway, if you have any questions, I'll stay here for later, but thank you for your time.
Do we have anyone else from the applicant who will speak?
Good evening, Planning Commissioners. Joseph Kalpikoff, owner of Mid-Valley Recycling. My family has been in the recycling business for 24 years in Fresno. I'm fourth generation, and my office is located at 2721 South Elm. That's where I go to work every day. That's the facility that was on the map. In late '99, the city was under a compliance order to start recycling, put in recycling programs, curbside at 90,000 single-family homes. There wasn't a facility in Fresno to process that recycling. The city found a site. Our predecessors put it up. And in 2002, we moved in, the city implemented citywide recycling. That facility has been processing the city of Fresno's recycling for over 20 years. My family runs the company. We're there, we're local. We have over 75 full-time jobs. We spend a lot of money at local vendors, especially Valero, my good buddy. We're part of the community. My industry is probably one of the most regulated industries in California, if you can imagine. Solid waste recycling. We have local city permits, we have county permits, we have state permits, we have air permits, we have wastewater permits. We're heavily regulated. Our fleet that we have using that facility is 97% compressed natural gas. City of Fresno is 100%, and my fleet is 97%. There's a few diesel trucks we have to keep on the road due to the length of their routes. We can't put a CNG truck on there. The CNG trucks that we own, we're not required to buy CNG. We have chosen that investment over the last 7 years. We care about the environment as anybody else does. That's what we do. We're an environmental company, and we're a family company. When I found out that we were rezoned, I didn't really think much about it. They said we're grandfathered in. Well, I spend a few days a month in Sacramento, and every month, to watch regulations come down. I know the electrification's coming. Producers has a couple brand new electric trucks that they're running through Fresno right now. It's awesome. I can't wait. What I need is money to buy that, to buy those trucks. They're $850,000 for one truck. How do I get the money? Well, historically, I've taken my property, I sign it over to the bank, and I borrow money, and they take that property as collateral. With illegal non-forming, but that's going to be a challenge. I think you heard today from my lender. So what do? How do we stay ahead of the regulations? How do we get in front of it, which we've always done, and we want to continue to do, with illegal non-conforming land use? It's almost impossible without raising rates to everybody in the city of Fresno, significantly. So I ask today that you consider our application for a rezone. We're not growing, we're growing, everybody's built out. We're done. I'm on a CUP, I have truck counts, I have more regulations than most companies in Southwest Fresno or in Fresno. I'm limited on what I can do, how I can do it, and when I can do it. I just need the ability to grow and stay green, stay compliant with regulations, stay in front of it, and that will allow me to do that. I thank you.
Do we have anyone else from the applicant who will speak? Okay. Do we have any questions from the commission for the applicant? I do. Is someone online or no? John. Okay. Please let John speak. Please raise your hand, then we'll let John speak.
Oh. Hello, this is John Fondale. I'm with Jones Lang LaSalle. We are a corporate real estate advisory firm, and my office is on March Lane in Stockton. I'm here on behalf of the applicant and to speak about leasing of buildings and about representing corporate occupiers and finding buildings to lease. I've been industrial real estate broker in the Central Valley for over 34 years. And so I have a lot of experience in helping landlords find tenants and helping tenants find buildings. We're obligated as a real estate agent to disclose, as when somebody comes and looks at a building, to tell them what the zoning is and what their process is for occupancy. And if you cannot, if you have an industrial user that comes and looks at this building and the zoning is not for an industrial use, that company is going to move on and go find another property to locate in, or another city. And as a real estate agent representing a tenant, those tenants, time is extremely valuable and critical for their operations to be able to get in and operating in a timely fashion so they can, hire people, get up and running and satisfy their clients and customers. If there is a question mark in any way whatsoever, whether or not they can occupy a building or they've got to go through some process, that's some governmental lengthy process, again, they will move on and locate in another property or another city. So it makes it very difficult. In this particular case, a mixed-use development, these buildings were built for industrial occupancy. We're talking about different occupancy ratings because they've been built under the building code for light occupancy, for storage of goods. If you try to reconvert one of these buildings into more of a higher density for people, changes all the occupancy codes. The landlords would be burdened extremely in terms of changing the use codes of the building or changing the codes of the building to accommodate some kind of residential or higher occupancy non-industrial use. Not to mention that they're set up for parking, which is typically not, industrial would be not as intensive of a use as a non-industrial use for parking. So the mixed-use development makes these buildings very, very difficult to lease, and would make it very, very difficult and a burden to the owners to find tenants and keep their occupancy as the existing tenants move out, as was stated earlier. And with regards to just moving on, we work with, again, corporate occupiers, Fortune 500 companies, and we do have people that we are currently working with that have opted to move past Fresno and go to Visalia and look at Madera because there's not a clear path to occupancy and in a lot of these locations within the city. So that's all. Thank you again. I appreciate the opportunity to speak.
All right, thank you. Do we have any other individuals online on the Zoom? Okay. We'll bring it back to the commission now. The commission, do we have any questions for the applicant? No? Okay. So before we open it up to the public, we're going to go ahead and take a 10-minute break. Okay. We'll take a 10-minute break. It's 8:09. We'll go ahead and come back at 8:19. All right, thank you. patience. So now what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and we're going to open this up to the public. Are there any members of the public who wish to comment, most importantly in favor of this application, that are in the chambers? If you're a member of public on Zoom or would like to comment on an item, please use the raise hand function. If you're calling in, dial *9. And again, this is for the public members who are in support of this application. So I don't see any in the chambers. Do we have any? We do have one individual in the chambers. So please state your name and address, and you have 3 minutes, sir.
Hi, my name is Steve Brock. I'm a consultant to Stravinsky Development Group. 2 things. In the recent past, another user was approved, and they're brand new use. We're an existing use. There's a lot of talk about when we got notice and what we were told back in 2017. But I'm going to read you a letter from the city that on the night they voted, they said we were good to go. We didn't come. There's no question, we didn't show up. The letter is addressed to our lender, Protective Life. We were putting a brand new mortgage on. We've been called liars, connivers, and everything else, telling these people that we're in default. We're technically in default. It says subject, zoning inquiry number Q17073, requesting information on assessor's parcel number 328-240-33, 38, and 40, located at 2035 East Annandale Avenue, Fresno, California. This is from Margot Litterwill to our lender. Thank you for your letter of inquiry regarding the zoning of the subject parcels. The requested information about Fresno Municipal Code Zone District compliance has been obtained from public records in the Development and Resource Management DARM Department. The City of Fresno on December 3rd, 2015 adopted a new Citywide Development Code, Chapter 15 of the FMC. This zoning inquiry reflects the updated zone classification changes in the property. Anytime you want me to stop, tell me and I'll go sit down. The letter verifies that 2035 East Annandale Avenue refers to assessor's parcel number 328240-50 and pertains to 23.46 acres of property zoned on the north side of East Annandale, west of State Highway 41 in Fresno, California. The address 2001 East Annandale Avenue, 2020 East Vine, and 2090 East Vine, and the site address is 2045 East Annandale, are also located on Assessor's Map 328240-50. Assessor's Marshal numbers 328-240-3838, 33 through 38 and 40 are no longer valid parcel numbers. Research of the records about the subject property reveals the following. Parcel 328-24050 is zoned light industrial. The IL district is intended to provide areas as identified by the general plan for a diverse range of light industrial uses, including limited manufacturing and processing, research, development, fabrication, utilities. I can go on and read the entire letter. You can put it on the record. But the fact is, we didn't come and raise the issue because we were told everything was hunky-dory. They told our lender it was hunky-dory. You can go back to the notice dates, okay, in the Fresno Bee. Sylvester's right. The Fresno Bee got a notice on October 8, 2017. We got our first communication from the city on October 16th, and it was voted on by the city October 26th. We got a letter saying we were good to go. Just do the right thing. Be fair.
Thank you. Do we have any other individuals within the chambers who would like to speak in support? I see none. Do we have any individuals on Zoom who would like to speak in support of the project, the application? Please use the raise hand function, and we'll let you speak. And again, this is in support of the project. Ms. Madeline, are you in support of the project or are you in opposition of the project?
We are opposing. I apologize.
No, not a problem. So we're going to go ahead again. This is, we're going to go ahead and see if anyone is in support. And again, this is in support. If you are, please use the raise hand function. We'll give you 3 minutes to speak. Ms. Janice, do we have any hands raised?
Not at this time.
Okay. So now we'll go ahead and open it to individuals who are in opposition. If you're in opposition within the chambers, please step up to the podium to speak. State your name, address, and you have 3 minutes.
I put it in hard, so I won't be long. You know that. Thank you. My name's Emily Brandt. And I was just speaking with 2 gentlemen here who presented, well, one did, talking about the fact that this particular plan is not going to reduce or improve the air quality or any of the living health issues that are rampant in Southwest Fresno. The whole idea of the Southwest Fresno specific plan rezoning was an attempt to make good on the decades, hundreds of years of damage done to the environment in Southwest Fresno. It wasn't reparations, no, but it was a really serious attempt to move toward reconciling some of the damage done. And this clearly goes backward. It was interesting to hear what the business owners said, and I can understand their frustration at being not given the correct information about the zoning, to think that it was still light industrial when it had changed. But the whole move has been to get away from light industrial and to give people the air. It's not going to make it worse, perhaps, but it is not going to improve it. That is a very serious concern that this commission needs to think about. Where are people going to live who cannot afford to live anywhere else in Fresno? We already have plans for West Creek Village housing that's going to be much more expensive than what people have where they live, and their prices are going to go up. They're going to be priced out. We know it is going to be gentrified, and you know, we already have some 4,000 homeless. Those numbers will increase. So this is worthy of much more attention than it is getting in these kinds of sessions. Please look at the impact on the community in a much broader way than anyone is discussing here. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you very much. For everyone's information, too, whenever you do hear their first bell, that just means they have 1 minute left. Okay, so please state your name and address.
Sylvester Hall, and it's an honor once again to be before the commission, and I want to thank you for your work. If I would have knew that we were going to have to listen to some of the things I've listened to by some of the applicants, I don't have any cowboy boots anymore, but I would have bought me a pair of cowboy boots before I came down here, because I would have needed them to stand in all the stuff I've heard. But I'm confident in the commissioners, because I'm looking at some very astute people, some very intelligent people. There's some folks that know about the history of America, the history of Fresno, and who knows a snake oil salesman when they're here, or a snake oil sales presentation. When we start talking about people didn't receive notice, they're insulting our planning department, because you guys know when these projects go forward that due notice is sent. I own the Valero reference at 2615 South Elm Avenue on that corner, and I've been there for 20 years. And I received notice when the Southwest Pacific Plan was being developed. And I also received notice at my home. My parents received notice who live in that area as well, and other family members received notice. So due notice was delivered to all the residents and property owners within the required area. But also just to hear folks come from out of our city talking about they did an environmental study. They spent a few days and wrote up a couple of pages on an environmental study, and here's what's best for our neighborhood and our community, to supersede a document that people spent 3 years on with all sort of astute people putting together their efforts to make sure this was one of the best documents ever developed in the history of Fresno planning, and to help redirect all the wrongs of Southwest Fresno. And hear people talking about, we say that over the last 10 years that, Southwest Fresno has received heavy industrialization. No, we all know that they're trying to even play on your intelligence, because back in 1989 is when they designated Southwest Fresno as the industrial corridor. So that's when all the heavy industrialization of Southwest Fresno took place prior to this 10 years. And to hear their representative say we, he's a paid representative. He's not we. And any of these folks that are complaining, none of them look like the folks in Southwest Fresno. So to hear Buzz Oates come down here and talk about they sacrificed hundreds of millions of dollars to make hundreds of millions of more dollars off the death of our people being polluted, it's strange, isn't it? And to hear them talk about they have difficulty getting loans and what have you. DHL is based in England, a multi-billion-dollar conglomerate. SmithKline, Glasgow, multi-billion-dollar German conglomerate. You think they care about our neighborhood, their shareholders? That's what this is all about. All they keep talking about in front of you guys is how their bottom line is going to be affected. They haven't talked about the death of my cousin who died last year from asthma, my mother right now who's on 4% oxygen right now that lives in Southwest Fresno, and all the rest of our citizens. So I know you guys know your town, you know your history, and trust me, we all know about the deaths of 1,000 cuts. And when you start cutting away at a document that hasn't even taken its first step of life, we got the West Creek Village project under development. Those are the things we want. A college, Washington Union School District moving their campus up on our 12 acres. D.R. Horton building 136 homes.
Mr. Sylvester, you have 10 more seconds, okay?
Okay, and us building out a regional commercial shopping center. And we need that, and that's what we're building. And they will be able to perform as they perform under the present zoning and the Southwest Pacific Plan criteria. And I am counting on you guys not to pass this on the council, not to say as long as they do outreach. No, this is just about more money, making more money off the lives of the less fortunate. God bless you, and thank you very much.
Thank you. Go ahead.
Hello, commissioners. Thank you for your service and for your patience. I don't think I could do it. And so I just really appreciate what you're doing. And yes, Jennifer, you can mention my name. I just read the email just a while ago. Okay, so William Allen White said that peace without justice is tyranny. Capitalism unchecked leads to injustice, inequity, and oppression. The Southwest Pacific Plan is a monumental accomplishment by members of our community intended to change the trajectory of planning and development in our community. Its principles should not be violated for personal interest. The Southwest Pacific Plan sets the tone for building a healthy and more vibrant future for people in Southwest Fresno. Please recognize and respect the desires of many in our community by not unraveling years of work to develop policy changes and land use designations, creating a pathway to new development prosperity for our families in Southwest Fresno, points mentioned by the applicants. There is no industrial zoning in Southwest Fresno, in the Southwest Fresno specific plan area, because we have been severely overburdened and inundated with industrial uses for decades. It is difficult to quantify a lack of communication to landowners regarding a process that lasted almost 3 years. Applicant community meetings took comments providing very little response or answers to community questions. To say that they don't have the capacity to expand is misleading, because when I took the tour of Mid-Valley, I took the tour, and it is a garbage place. That's what they do. I took the tour, and one of the young ladies told me that they were only at 50% capacity. They still had room to expand within the building. They had room to bring more trucks in. And so, and then we want industry in Fresno, just not in Southwest Fresno, because we have been so inundated with industrial businesses, like I said, for decades. So it's our desire that this application to rezone 92.5 acres of Elm Avenue will finally be completed and unanimously denied and put to a horrible death. I got more time?
You still got 30 seconds. 30
okay,
seconds.
I got some more? Okay, cool. The application perpetuates the continuation of a long existing culture of industrial oppression for profit. This is another example of the rich investing in impoverished, neglected neighborhoods for profit, affording them the ability to live lavishly in upscale neighborhoods. This is another example of businesses that bring jobs into our community that are not filled by people that live in our community. It is unkind and inhumane to continue to give privilege to businesses that continue to contribute to lower life expectancy in Southwest Fresno than any other place in our city. The application also allows for an increase in the latitude of industrial level mitigation policies already permitted through the grandfathering clause of the Southwest Pacific Plan. And then finally, this application will further open the door to increasing an industrial presence in Southwest Fresno, completely violating the intent of the Southwest Pacific Plan to reverse decades of deliberate and intentional placement of industrial businesses in our neighborhood, further decaying our health and our quality of life. Please do not recommend this application for consideration to City Council. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. Do we have any other individuals within the chambers who would like to speak in opposition?
Good evening. I'm going to speak to you as a resident. I was born and raised at 1127 East Annandale, which is probably 1,000 feet away from the rezone application for the development project. When my grandparents migrated from the segregated Jim Crow South of Tennessee in the late 50s, they purchased a home due to redlining here in Fresno, which means they were not able to purchase a home on the other side of the railroad tracks. Less than 200 feet away from the proposed site, my grandfather later built a home a little down the street from the ground up. And till this day, planning documents will probably show that it was probably the fastest 3-bedroom, 2-bathroom home that was built in the city of Fresno, in that neighborhood, in that community. My grandfather died from a brain aneurysm. My grandmother died from an infection in the brain. I have a brother who is older than me, who is autistic. I have my oldest brother, who's an administrator in the Washington Union High School District, who grew up with respiratory problems because of asthma. My mother birthed me as a premature child. I was supposed to be born in October. I was born in July. But I am a testimony to what a nurturing community can do for a student like myself. When I could remember riding my bike all the way through Annandale before the industrial warehouses went up and before the Freeway 41 went up. And so for me, this is personal. Armed with a dual degree in biology and chemistry from one of the most prestigious historical black colleges and universities in the country, attaining my master's degree in microbiology and going on to work for AMDC, Army Missile Defense and Command as a senior scientist. I come back to my neighborhood and I live here because I want to. I have a choice on where I can choose to live. And I choose to fight for the people that live in my neighborhood that look just like me, that maybe didn't go as far as that I did in life. And so my humble request to you is to deny this CUP application and this rezone. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Do we have any other individuals within the chambers who would like to speak in opposition of this project? Please state your name, address. You have 3 minutes.
Hey there, good evening, Commissioners. My name is Daniel Brannick. I live at 657 East Hedges in Fresno in the Tower District. I'm a member of the District 1 Plan Implementation Review Committee. I'm just here as a personal resident. I don't want to say I deeply speak in opposition to this. I do, but there's some nuance to it. Part of my big concern here today, it's process concerns and practical concerns. I read through the Southwest Fresno specific plan, knowing this is going on. A lot of people who I work with in the planning field locally are talking about this process, and it made me think about other land use planning processes that are going on right now. The West Area Neighborhood specific plan, SADA, South Central Industrial, and before I even sat on the committee I'm in, I have a lot staked in like how those processes unfold, and it's been really empowering for a lot of the people in the neighborhood. I don't see a way that like what's being proposed here at a process level is consistent with what was laid out in the Southwest Fresno specific plan, and I get that there's noticing, potential issues there, but it's almost like unequivocal that industrial is not part of the vision going forward for that area. And I'll get to the industrial benefits, but what it really calls into question is if the city's going to move forward on this and greenlight it and endorse it, it really undermines the integrity of all these other planning processes that we have. If we're just going to run them along and say thank you, we'll get money from SGC, from the state or whoever, and a couple of years down the road when people aren't paying attention, we're willing to say, okay, we're gonna do an about face, and not on something narrow, something like really like principled in there. So this is at a process level that I have some big concerns about what's going forward. On something like this, to see what's being proposed get approved, something with more robust community input and green lighting would be acceptable. That'd be a different story, and I just don't think I've seen it here from what I've been hearing. But that gets to the practical. Before I worked in environmental planning, before I went to law school, before I went to Fresno State, I worked at a printing company in Fresno. Affected by high-speed rail. I know what it's like, working in a bindery in a press room. My father still works there. I know what it's like being there in the recession when everybody got put on EBT cards because you can't make payroll, and it's really tough. There is a serious citywide problem about how we're going to fix where industrial can go. There's guys in this room who are good operators. And even the Southwest Fresno plan assumes that, we're going to put stuff in the reverse triangle. Well, now that's running into problems with the South Central specific plan. The city has like a policy directive to do an industrial use compatibility study that they haven't done, and that needs to go forward. And I don't have all the answers here, but that's one part of it. I want to get that on the record in this whole discussion to say, okay, how can we be better neighbors, and how can we manage externalities in terms of if you're going to be an industrial user and there's just no matter what you do, you can try to be as clean as you want. There's going to be negative impacts to the people closest to you. How to have like tailored offsetting benefits to go along with that, to say, all right, this is acceptable, digestible. I'm sure other people can talk more about their who live in Southwest can talk more about the effects there, but I just would feel bad if I attended here today and didn't say my piece. I thank you for your time, and have a good rest of your evening.
Thank you very much. We have any other members of the public within the chambers who would like to speak in opposition? I see none. We'll go to Zoom. If you want to speak in opposition of the applicant of the project itself, then please use the raise hand function. Please state your name, address. You have 3 minutes.
Hi, this is Ivanka Saunders with Leadership Council for Justice and Accountability. I'm a policy advocate there. Residents of Southwest Fresno again asked this planning commission to deny this plan amendment application. We have submitted to you a comment letter that explains in detail a multitude of concerns as to why you should not move to approve this planned amendment application. First, there's the violation of duty to affirmatively further fair housing. Per the AB 686, the City of Fresno must plan for housing and community development through the housing element process, which includes the responsibility to create healthy communities and leave land use actions and decision that place light industry next to sensitive receptors such as the medical clinic, the senior apartments, and the future affordable single-family homes and 2 schools. Violation of SB 330 Housing Crisis Act of 2019 is another. Until January 2025, the Housing Crisis Act suspends certain restrictions on the development of new housing and expedites the permitting of housing in urbanized areas of the state. It prohibits an affected city or county from enacting or enforcing a moratorium on housing development or certain growth control ordinances, and prohibits changes to a less intensive use, including anything that would lessen the intensity of housing. Another in compliance is with the intent and goals of the Transformative Climate Communities Program, as well as the AB 617 Community Air Protection Program. Southwest Fresno has suffered decades of poor and racially unjust land use practices that have led to Southwest Fresno being selected for 2 highly competitive grants known as TCC and AB 617 programs. The goal of these programs are to rectify and support the City of Fresno from continuing the siting of poor land uses within communities of color. There's also the incompliance and inconsistencies with the intent and vision of the Southwest Fresno specific plan that you've heard a lot about already. And there's the inadequacy of an environmental assessment. Per the CEQA, California Environment Quality Act, local jurisdictions must assess the potential environmental impact of a proposed project. The analysis conducted here is inadequate and incompliant with state law. You got to hear tonight from an environmental analysis in support of this program using the same arguments that the people of the community would use, while they're stating that, well, this couldn't be used for any other thing other than industrial land use. You wouldn't want to see housing sitting here. What is the difference of it sitting there than less than 50 feet across from where it currently sits? The purpose of the Southwest Fresno specific plan, while you may be grandfathered in, is to restrict the possibility of future growth of that type of use in an area where there is already an overburden of industrial uses. So I'm not afraid to tell you, yeah, it might be screwing with your plan to continue business as usual, but that was part of the specific plan to make sure that that cannot continue. To all of you who are sitting there and can only look at your bottom line, do you even have people over here? Have you ever even slept in a house on this side of town?
You haven't,
do you know?
You have 10 seconds, okay?
Do you know what it's like to live in a community with all of the things? Or maybe you just don't care. Maybe you just can only see that bottom line of money. So we're asking this planning commission to do what's right. Thank you.
Thank you. Let's go ahead and let the next individual speak. Please state your name and address. You have 3 minutes.
Hi, this is Brandy Dusufi, I guess, District 7. And I can't say it better than the people who preceded me. Regarding this property, I just want to agree and say that the health and well-being of the community members in this area needs to be paramount over anything else, and that every protection be made for that and for the purposes of the Southwest specific plan to protect the well-being, and to not only that, but to focus on putting in and developing things in a way that augment the people who live in that community and their lives and their well-being and their lifespan, their everything that their health, everything that affects them. So I agree and I oppose this. I also want to add, because I did was working and just missed it, but I wanted to thank you for your vote on 7A regarding the Bullard and Del Mar rezoning, and appreciate the comments about their having substantial community outreach and engagement for projects like these. But thank you so much for your vote on that. That's all.
Thank you. Let's go ahead and let the next individual speak. Please state your name, address, 3 minutes.
Good evening, Planning Commission. Kyle Lopez-Schmidt, 115 North Calaveras Avenue. I'm speaking today as representative of the consultant team that worked on the Southwest Fresno specific plan. My business, Pop-Up Design and Development, alongside Fresno State anthropology students, worked tirelessly in a public outreach process that was very robust and engaged hundreds of neighbors within the Southwest Fresno area. And also want to mention there's another member of the consultant team, Shared Spaces, along with Oliver Baines, did outreach to business owners and developers in talking about what this plan should entail. Through that process, a lot of iterations were put together, mainly with the planning team and the at the direction of the city, trying to find any way to include industrial within Southwest Fresno. That's kind of the peek behind the curtain of what happens sometimes in these processes, is that those business owners have representatives. They are the elected leaders. They are the planning department members that are pushing their perspective and their economic participation. But then we have community members that are speaking to their real life experiences. And you heard that with Pastor Lewis, Sylvester Hall, and Eric Payne, and really want to lift up their perspectives and the impact that these types of uses have in their neighborhood. That was really a central element of this planning process, where you had Oliver Baines standing up in front of the community, promising that this plan was different. This plan is a land use document that carries with it rezoning, and so this plan will be different. And this plan is our way for Southwest Fresno to get out from under the burden of industrial land uses. So I want you to kind of picture for a moment an Elm Avenue that is transformed, that is mixed use, that takes elements of the Annandale Commons and the new affordable housing that's being completed now, the health clinic, the potential with St. Rest's food to share program that's being developed. Really picture the 1,481 households that could live here, and tell them that in your vote that you support them having a healthy, robust lifestyle that is close to downtown and all the prosperity that a revitalized Fresno is going to bring. Really think about those 1,481 families when you make this vote, and I appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Let's go ahead and let the next individual speak. Please state your name, address. You have 3 minutes.
Good evening. My name is Lisa Flores. I live in the North Tower, District 1, and I'm not only in opposition of this, I see no clear choice but for the Planning Commission to vote this down. First off, it's totally an incomplete application that is in front of you. For the impacts that are going to be happening to the community, no, you need to vote this down. The community has spoken. There is a plan in place. They had the opportunity to participate. They chose not to. That's on them. Also, too, I find the presentation somewhat disingenuous. For example, they talk about, oh, we're creating all these jobs, but they never tell you how many jobs have you created, and the percentage of those jobs, how many of those individuals live in the neighborhoods, live in West Fresno. How are you, improving the economic impact versus people coming and leaving for employment? And also too, you know, I understand the bottom line, and I also understand capitalism, and I understand your business model to all the business owners. But my question to you is, what is the value of a child's life when they're born premature, when their life is cut short because they're born in West Fresno and the air quality is so bad? How many years of life are basically cut from them for your bottom line? You need to start thinking less about money and more about the impact on the community. You know, it's so much more than a bank loan. And I would ask the Planning Commission to look into that. I understand, you know, promoting business, getting businesses and all this, but there's also, you know, the economy of a person's life. You know, how much is a person's life worth to you guys? Name the price. You know, how many jobs are actually in the community, from residents in the community? You guys talk about, you know, your attorney has talked about, you know, creating, you know, having all these jobs, but he's never once, in all the times I've seen him publicly, you know, make comments and statements, actually given the number of the people who actually live in West Fresno that work in your businesses. Simple ask. You're not improving the community. Sorry, but I would hope that the Planning Commission, no, I don't hope, I demand the Planning Commission commissioners deny this application. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Flores. Do we have any other individuals online who would like to speak? Please state your name, address, and you have 3 minutes.
Guadalupe, you now have permission to unmute yourself.
Guadalupe, if you can hear us, please unmute yourself. State your name, address, you have 3 minutes. Janice, let's go ahead and go to the next one, please.
Good evening, Madeline Howard from Western Center on Law and Poverty on behalf of Central Valley Urban Institute. We're opposing this proposal again. As mentioned by prior speakers, this proposal completely undermines the Southwest Specific Plan, and it is extremely harmful for this community that has already suffered from a concentration of industry. It is deeply problematic for the city to cite the racial makeup of this community and the harmful land practices that have been happening in order to get funding and then turn around and invite even more industry in. The specific plan contemplates the phasing out of industry, not opening the door to more development. And even if the business owners assert that no new use is contemplated here, the rezone opens the door to that. In addition, the value of the land and the profits of these companies have to be weighed against the public health harms to the entire community. And that's the balance that is struck by the Southwest Specific Plan. The economic interests of a small group of business owners do not justify these severe harms to the whole community. It's just very comfortable to profit from industry while not having to live near it, so you can keep your family safe from industrial pollution. The statistics that were presented on the concentration of industry in Southwest Fresno are really contradicted by the EPA rating that puts this community at 99th percentile in terms of environmental hazards. This is a community that is subjected to a huge number of environmental harms that are directly impacting the health of residents. And as discussed by the planning staff, this proposal just has to be denied because it's not compliant with SB 330. There's no separate amendment that's proposed to offset the loss in housing. And in addition, as I discussed on the prior item, a lot of the same arguments apply here. This proposal would violate anti-discrimination laws, including the Fair Housing Act and the parallel state law, in addition to AB 686, which mandates that Fresno take affirmative steps to reduce the harmful impacts of industry on this community of color. This rezone would do the opposite. The proposal has to be denied. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Let's go ahead and move on to the next individual. Please state your name, address, and you have 3 minutes.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, miss.
Okay. My name is Michael and Lewis. I live in Southwest Fresno, 93706, off of Jensen and Elm Avenue, so I'm very close to that industrial park. And I'm going to make this short and sweet. For you to approve that plan, it's going to be a total slap in the face to the residents of Southwest Fresno. And I'm going to end right there. Thank you.
Thank you. Let's move on to the next individual. Please state your name, address, and you have 3 minutes.
My name is Mary Curry. I'm a resident of West Fresno. I'm going to give you a very brief history about who I am, and then I'm going to tell you what I think about the plan. First of all, I am the last living person in my immediate family. My father died in the military. I had 7 uncles who served in the military, came back and couldn't get work, couldn't ride the bus. I'll leave that there. But beyond that, I'm invested in this country and in this city. I moved here from Fresno in 1957, from Denver in 1957, and I had 1 son. We had 4 more children after we moved here. When we came to Fresno, there was the airport was a redwood building. Fresno Community Hospital was a wooden building. There were fig trees and fig garden that had figs on them. And there were 2 grocery stores. I watched as the deterioration of West Fresno took place. We lost the grocery stores. We lost everything except the things that grew out of what we lost. We had no grocery store for many years. We had to go all the way across town to a grocery store. Now, I tell you this because I want you to understand that those of us who are here, we're real people, and we have real needs and real concerns. And the fact that people take this lightly and talk about their businesses and how much they can't borrow, many people don't even know how to borrow. But the point I'm making now is that to go with this plan is wrong. We've worked very, very hard. We got City College coming in, already building. We've got a lot of clean development coming in. And so we're asking you tonight, please consider that the people you're looking at are talking to are real human beings with real human needs. And we hope that you will deny this. It's not because we don't want people to thrive, we do, but we've been dumped on for all the years that I've been in Fresno. And that's 65 plus years I've been in this community, and I have worked in this community. And I'm concerned that people don't listen to us. People want community involvement, we get involved, and then people throw our involvement out the window. So we're saying to you tonight, take into consideration the time spent on the Southwest Pacific Plan and the time spent trying to make our community a better place to live and trying to make sure that the people who are elected to protect us and look out for us are doing it for all of us, not just for some of us. So I urge you to vote against this plan. It is not in the best interest of the community. And if any part of the community is in pain, the whole community ought to be upset. So we're asking you to disavow this plan. Do not let it go through. It is wrong, just simply wrong. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Let's please let the next individual speak. State your name, address, and you have 3 minutes.
Good evening, commissioners. Thank you for allowing me to speak. My name is Kimberly McCoy. I am a project director with Fresno Building Healthy Communities. As someone who has worked countless hours on this plan, this zoning change completely disrespects our residents and community members who call Southwest Fresno home. They have been adamant about the zoning change and have demanded that the neighborhood mixed-use zoning stays in place. Research and data shows if you're born in Southwest area of Fresno that you automatically lose 20 years off your life. Asthma, preterm birth, and stillborn rates are alarmingly high. This has not changed, but has only gotten worse. As a lifelong asthmatic, I can say that this struggle is not improving for residents like me. Health impacts more than just our physical life. People are underinsured, underemployed, and making sacrifices that are a direct effect of the negative impacts of industrialized zoning. In closing, I demand the commission to recognize the work and diligence put forth by
Ms. McCoy, are you still there?
Can you hear me now?
I can. You were cut off. We couldn't hear you for the past maybe 15 seconds or so, miss.
Okay, so what did you, let me try to go through this in 15 seconds
No, go ahead.
again.
Just, I believe it was your closing statement that we couldn't hear.
Okay, so my closing statement was, in closing, I demand the commission to recognize the work and diligence put forth by community and respect their voices, which is their power. The decision that they made when they worked tirelessly on this plan. They are holding you accountable for their future. And those were the end of my comments. I hope you guys got them all.
Thank you. Let's go ahead and let the next individual speak. Please state your name. Address. You have 3 minutes.
Good evening, Fresno Planning Commission. My name is Guadalupe Ramos, 367 North 1st Street. The commission must consider their environmental impact this rezoning will have on our residents. Residents have asked repeatedly, but now we demand that toxic industrial facilities are no longer welcome in our neighborhoods. We want the good neighbors, not the bad neighbors. Neighbors that encourage community growth, environmental change, sustainable development. This rezoning is not a good neighbor, but exactly the opposite. For too long, industrialized use rezoning has created public health crisis. This commission has the authority to change the narrative and create a new story in our communities. Community advocates have canvassed and talked to our neighbors, and everyone agrees that this is not a community-led plan, and that is about special interests. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Janice, do we have any other individuals with the hands raised?
One more.
Okay, go ahead and let that individual speak. Please state your name, address, and you have 3 minutes.
Hello, everyone. My name is Manola Laganju. I work for Fresno Building Healthy Communities. After everything you've heard today, I think the sentiment is pretty loud and clear. Southwest Fresno does not want the rezoning to happen. For a community that has fought so long and hard against having such entities in the area where we know it has affected and know it's continuing to affect residents who live there, doing the rezoning would be an inservice and an injustice to those who live in that community. We asked the commission to not move forward with this proposal, and we asked them to take into consideration what is here today, because I feel like we are focusing on the now and not the future. We are focusing on whose bottom dollar is being paid and whose is not. These people, they live here. They breathe here. They do everything here. So I would kindly ask the commission to consider that. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have, I see one individual, Ms. Curry, with their hand raised.
She's already spoke.
She has? Okay.
Chair.
Do we have anyone else besides that individual? Okay. So one individual spoke within. Let's go ahead and let the individual speak.
We're not the same person.
Okay.
So you heard from Mrs. Mary Curry earlier, and so I am the daughter, Dr. Venice Curry, and so I appreciate you allowing me to speak. I want just to reiterate some of the comments that were made, and just to remind us of where we have been. In 2014, we sat through, as a community, watching Bryn Tag be placed in our community against all opposition, despite the fact that it was down the street from an elementary school. What we were told was that our area was zoned to allow industrial sites. And so our response was, we will change the zoning. So I think it's rather astute that our applicants have recognized that there is no more industrial zoning in West Fresno. That's by design, because our public health impacts across the generation have been detrimental to our lives. And so from preconception to the preterm birth rates that exist in Fresno County, roughly 13.3 at this point for African Americans, from our cardiovascular disease to our obesity rates to just the asthma rates and asthma prevalence. This repeated and consistent and cumulative exposure to PM 2.5, to PM 10, and to ozone is a real health hazard, and we see it in all of the metrics that are measured consistently. We saw it in COVID outcomes, and we see it consistently now. So it is not by accident that our community raised its voice and said no more. And so the idea of rezoning or going back to zoning that would allow further industrial sites to be planted in West Fresno is contraindicated. You've already heard some of the reasons why. What the rezone application asks us to do is to refuse to acknowledge the health impacts, to refuse to acknowledge the California legislation that has identified our community as one of those that is most impacted by poor air quality, and to act as if we are not concerned, nor do we have any interest in solving the problem. The Southwest Pacific Plan was a community-driven plan that addressed the priority of ridding our community of industrial zoning. It laid the groundwork for transformative climate communities, again, another community-driven process that allowed for more voices to be heard and to expound on what is important to our community. So we are not supporting a rezone that would absolutely be detrimental to our health. We are not supporting a rezone that doesn't address housing. And I'm curious as to if this application was presented in 2021, and here we are in June of 2022, why wasn't there a plan to address the housing, since that was always a part of the concern of the community? So I don't have any desire for us to contradict our own community process, undermine the Southwest Pacific Plan in any form or fashion. We fought hard in order to preserve not only our community as it is, but aspirationally to see it improve. And that's for every generation to improve by limiting the amount of poor air quality. And yes, that includes allowing any more industrial zoning. And so we're in opposition. I'm in opposition to this for all the reasons that you've heard and for all of the public health impacts that it has. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Curry. Do we have any other individuals on Zoom with their hands raised?
Not at this time, Chair.
Okay. So we'll go ahead and we'll let the applicant provide a rebuttal.
Well, thank you very much for the opportunity, John Kinsey, again, on behalf of the applicants. I've heard a lot of comments, very generalized comments about negative impacts associated with heavy industrial land uses. And again, we don't necessarily disagree that bad actors, heavy industrial land uses, can have negative impacts on communities. In fact, our property is a buffer between heavy industrial land uses and the community. We, however, are completely different. This is light industrial. These are logistics companies, a recycling company that does a great service for the city of Fresno. These are not smokestacks. These are not polluting companies. These are companies that are getting cleaner every year, and we need this rezone to get even cleaner. This rezone is necessary to help the community, to help get cleaner, because we need the financing to electrify. Now, the other thing I want to mention is the Baceto project was here 2 weeks ago. Baceto, like this project, was zoned to a residential land use. They also didn't get notice. 2 weeks ago, this planning commission voted in favor of recommending the approval of that project to the city council. They wanted to change their land use to light industrial zoning. And they're proposing a brand new light industrial land use, a manufacturing facility. And this planning commission voted in their favor. The difference between our project and their project is this project is not asking for any new construction. This project is asking to let us continue to do what we've been doing in a very clean manner for the last 10 to 15 years. And with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Do we have any questions from the commission? Any commissioners online who have any questions? I see none. Thank you.
Thank you for your time.
All right, so we're going to go ahead and close the public comments, bring it back to the commission. Any commissioners would like to make any kind of comment or any kind of motion?
I'll go to make a comment. So I just want to start off by saying that I appreciate the very tough and untenable position that the applicants have been put in. I appreciate in particular that a number of the businesses, as was alluded to earlier, were actually recruited by the city and answered the call of the city, and were recruited by, if I'm not mistaken, a former council member that represented the area. And I certainly appreciate the obstacles to leasing, to lending, and to improving green technologies that the status quo promotes. So to me, it's clear that the status quo is definitely untenable. However, I would say that given the pending proposed overlay ordinance that we discussed earlier, for which we'll be soliciting additional input to try to improve, and given in particular, speaking as a lawyer, the fact that the current application does not comply with the municipal code and SB 330, and given that the application is opposed by the California Air Resources Board, the California Strategic Growth Council, the San Joaquin Valley Air Pollution Control District, community-based groups, and most importantly, residents of Southwest Fresno, I don't see any other choice than to recommend to the City Council that the application be denied.
Thank you for the comments. I too want to make a comment. I think it's difficult. It's a difficult situation, and as as much as both parties feel very passionate about their perspective, I think ultimately both parties actually share the same common goal, because the decision, either way, it's going to affect both parties' families, right? You have to run a business. You run a business, and ultimately that bottom line is there to support your family, okay? And then the residents in Southwest Fresno, being born and raised in Fresno on First and McKinley, the youngest out of 7, I understand the difficulties. I understand the difficulties facing the community itself. So I'm very sympathetic to Southwest Fresno, but ultimately, kind of looking at the facts and the staff reports itself, it's difficult because, look at the city of Fresno, our housing crisis. Where are we gonna go ahead and rezone and try to rezone an area and try to get 1,480 dwellings? It's gonna be difficult, and to me, the fact that it's in the SB 330 is gonna require us to find another area to rezone. It's gonna be difficult for me to support the staff's recommendations. So with that being said, I'll go ahead and I'm going to go ahead and make a motion. Give me a second. I'm going to go ahead and make a recommendation. Recommend denial to the Fresno City Council for all. Recommend to deny the EIR. Recommend to deny the plan amendment application number P2001665. And recommend denial of the rezone application number P2001665, proposal to rezone the subject properties from neighborhood mixed use zone district to light industrial zone district. I have a motion on the table made by Chair Vane. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
We have a second. Please take vote.
Commissioner Fuentes?
Yes.
Commissioner Wagner?
No.
Commissioner Diaz?
No.
Commissioner Hardy?
Go ahead and try it again, please.
No.
Chair Ving?
Yes. We have motion doesn't pass. Do we have another motion on the table?
I'll make a motion to recommend consideration to the council on all 3 points. The fact that this is an existing build-out that currently serves our community. I can appreciate the comments from both sides, and I can appreciate the work that has gone into the plan. I also know that our population here continues to grow, and as our population grows, we need the services to support it. So, with that being said, I recommend consideration to the council for the addendum to the final program EIR. I recommend consideration to the City Council of Plan Amendment Application Number P20-01665, proposing to amend the Fresno General Plan and the Southwest Fresno Specific Plan to change the plan land use designation from neighborhood mixed use to light industrial. And I recommend consideration to the City Council of Rezone Application Number P20-01665, proposing to rezone the subject properties from the neighborhood mixed-use zone to the district light industrial zone.
Okay, so we have a motion made by Commissioner Wagner. Do we have a, well, do you?
Sorry, Chair Vang, Commission members, there are 3 options presented by staff, so we would just ask for clarification on the motion if the recommendation is for the council to approve the application or potentially approve with conditions.
I motion to approve the application.
Okay. So we have a motion made by Commissioner Wagner. Do we have a second?
I will second that.
Okay. So we have a second by Commissioner Diaz. Please take vote.
Commissioner Fuentes?
No.
Commissioner Wagner?
Yes.
Commissioner Diaz?
Yes.
Commissioner Hardy?
Yes.
Commissioner Vang?
No. We have 3 votes to 2. Motion passes. Thank you, everyone, for your patience. Thank you. We have this last item. It's going to be continued to June 15, 2022. It's for ID 22901. Do we have any reports by the Secretary?
Good evening, Chair Vang. No, I do not have any reports tonight. Thank you.
Thank you.
I just want to state on the record that Chair Bray left during the break. She had recused from the Elm Avenue item because she realized in the middle of the presentation she had an interest that conflicted her out. So she left during the break because of the final item just being continued. And I just wanted to say it's been a pleasure working with all of you. I've really enjoyed my time here on Planning Commission. I hope you know I will still be across the hall, and our office enjoys working with all of you. Welcome back to Commissioner Fuentes and Commissioner Bray. We are so happy to be back at full commission. So thank you so much.
Well, thank you for your guidance throughout this entire meeting, too. Really do appreciate you.
Yeah, and best of luck on your new role.
Mm-hmm. Do we have any unscheduled communications? I see none. It is currently 9:23. Meeting is adjourned. Thank you.